of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Falcone?
Here.
Francisco?
Here.
Horton? House?
Here.
Schneider? Here. Williams? Mayor Bloom. Item number 1, proclamation declaring October 2009 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
You're right on time. That's
Yes.
good. October 2009 is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. An estimated 192,370 new cases of female breast cancer will be diagnosed in women in 2009. An estimated 1,900 new cases of male breast cancer will be diagnosed in 2009. Mammography is recognized as the most effective method of detecting breast changes that may be cancer long before physical symptoms can be seen or felt. About 40,170 women will die from breast cancer, and about 440 men will die from breast cancer in 2009. Early detection and prompt treatment can significantly reduce suffering and deaths caused by this disease. The Seroptimus Workplace Campaign for Breast Cancer Awareness are ongoing Seroptimus efforts to promote awareness, advocacy, and action, and Seroptimists are in a position worldwide to educate everyone, especially women. Seroptimist is an international volunteer organization for business and professional women who work to improve the lives of women and girls in local communities throughout the world. And it has launched a regional-wide campaign called Color Me Pink. And we're neither of us wearing pink. Oh, well, I guess tomorrow, huh? For breast cancer, to provide information about breast cancer. So I, Marty Bloom, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor, hereby proclaim October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month with special recognition to the Seroptimist International of Santa Barbara for their various contributions to the many communities for dissemination of information and celebrate successes and memorialize lost battles. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, council members, staff, good afternoon. I'm Nancy Heaton, President-elect of Seroptimist International of Santa Barbara. I'm honored to be here and thankful to receive this proclamation on behalf of our region governor, region board, and Seroptimists all over the world. This afternoon, the city of Santa Barbara becomes part of history by joining with other cities in the state of California on this region-wide Color Me Pink campaign for breast cancer awareness. Thank you for declaring October Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We hope that this city will continue to be part of this project, not just in October, but throughout the year and for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, public comment. I think we're going to have Mr. Lopez and maybe Ms. Rodriguez talk about the election. All of us should have our election pamphlets. And I had somebody call me. Hers is in Spanish. And I said, if you just turn it over, it'll be in English. And I know that's kind of like, oh, they made a mistake. No, you just need to turn it over. And you should all have your voter pamphlet right now. Mr. Lopez or Ms. Rodriguez, either one. Okay.
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. I'm Marcelo Lopez. I'm the Director of Administrative Services. I ran up the stairs, so I'm a little winded here. I guess I better get into shape now. With me is City Clerk Services Manager Cindy Rodriguez. As you know, we're conducting a vote-by-mail election this year. And it's the first time for the city, and actually it's the first time in this county. In preparation for the election, Cindy Rodriguez had meetings with the postmaster to ensure that we had the mail properly delivered. All the protocols and requirements were worked out with the post office, consistent with what is done typically for what we commonly refer to as an absentee ballot. So the process that is used to make sure that we get the ballots out there is the same process that we're using. We have sent out in excess of 46,000 ballots. I think it's 46,486. She has the actual number. 46,487.
She hasn't, not this year.
Corn to eat.
Oh, I know that. But has she
I'm not
gone?
sure. I
don't
she
think
did.
Well, maybe she did.
Maybe she didn't, but next year she says she's going
Yeah.
to. Because she said her taxes are $1,000, so she can get. Oh, I know. There is a law in Nebraska that if you buy, like say for instance, a lot of the farms there, they were like 100 and, they're anywhere from, in the old days when they pioneered them, they pioneered them as 80-acre lots with a farm, and each 80-acre farm lot had to have they had a whole full set of buildings, such as a barn, house, chicken coop, all these things. So, because I remember my dad owned 440 acres, so there was 160, 163, 20, and then another 100, another 120, whatever. But it came out to 440. But the railroad went through the middle of it, took out, I think, about 40 acres. So, should have been 480, but the railroad took out 40 acres. So, but anyway, what I'm saying is we had 3 sets of buildings, a house, 3 homes, 3 barns, 3 complete, granaries, all that sheds, corn sheds. So anyway, so they have a law now. You can go out and you can buy just the, let's say, 10 acres or the 5 acres that all the barn, the house, all that sits on, and then somebody else buys the rest of the farm. And farmers like to sell that off because they've got these big farmers. They farm anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 acres. They buy all the lands and you get the house. But there's a catch. The taxes are taxes for farm, not for homes. And so if you don't at least grow $1,000 worth of, how would you say, something, agriculture, then your taxes go up to homeowners.
Again, we took corrective action. While it is a responsibility of the post office to mail or to deliver the mail, we are assuming responsibility for corrective action whenever we hear that there may be some glitches or some errors. It is our election. It is our responsibility to make sure that things are done right. And that's exactly what we're doing. But I think at this point, we really need to ask ourselves, where do we go from here? And there is always some silver lining in some of this stuff. And the silver lining here is that I would like to take the opportunity to make some pretty important announcements. One is that there is still time to register to vote. If you are a city resident and you have not registered to vote, you still have an opportunity to register up to the 19th of this month so that you can cast your ballot up to the 3rd of November. You can pick up your registration card with the city clerk's office, the post office, Department of Motor Vehicles, and simply, if people want more information, the simple thing to do is to call the city clerk's office at 564-5309. Now, in the case of registered voters who have not received their ballot, they should have received their ballot by now. So if you are a registered voter and you have not received your ballot, again, call 564-5309 and we will mail you a replacement ballot immediately. Or you're welcome to come to City Hall, at which place you can pick up a replacement ballot. But let's talk a little bit about what are some of the reasons why people did not or are not receiving their ballots. One is because they did not receive it for some unknown reason. It happens. The post office handles millions of pieces of mail, and some of them don't get delivered as planned. So that happens occasionally. In other situations, the voter may have moved from their registration address. Consequently, they're not going to receive their ballot at their new address unless they made the changes at the registrar's office. The third situation is, and we found this in the 2007 election, is that it was in fact received, it was misplaced, put along with another stack of mail, and we get a call that says, I did not receive my ballot, can you send me a replacement? We have sent replacement ballots, only to later get the call, well, now I have two, what do I do? So we tell them you only mail one, otherwise your vote won't count. Or the voter assumed, one that where we did get a number of calls. We received about 50 calls in response to some of the articles in the newspaper. About half of those were from people that don't live in the city.
Darn.
And that they're county residents. We actually got a call from a Goleta resident. And it's the city of Santa Barbara municipal election. And so we let them know also that there may also be a city of Santa Barbara, but only city by name, but they're actually residents of an unincorporated part of the city, namely the county. Their mail says Santa Barbara, city of Santa Barbara, but they actually live in the county area. So we're finding those situations. We also want to take the opportunity to accentuate the fact that this is a vote by mail election. Folks that are anticipating going to the polls are not going to the polls this time around. There are two ways to vote. One way is to send your ballot back in the pre-stamped envelope to City Hall, and we'll be able to process them. The other way is to visit one of the 7 polling centers that we have throughout the city. And for polling center information, you can check your sample ballot, or you can call the city clerk's office at 564-5309. That is a very important number. We are pleased to inform the council that we are receiving a response and people are voting. As of today, we have received approximately 2,500 ballots, and the number is changing daily. So, voters are exercising their constitutional rights and privileges and are casting the votes. And lastly, if voters have not received their ballots or have any questions about the election, please call 564-5309.
Thank you. What was that number? 564-5309. Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions from up here? Mr. Williams.
Just so that people know and hear it, can you go over the 7 locations for folks, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do that by just saying that often I'll tell people to meet me at City Hall, and then they'll call me later on going, where's City Hall? So I just wanted to let people know that City Hall is actually a very picturesque and small 2-story building at the corner of Anacapa and De La Guerra. It's 735 Anacapa, and they can go into the bottom floor to get your ballot. And so, no, it's not that 6-floor or 4 or 5-story building up the street. It's 735 Anacapa is City Hall, where people can vote if they have not received a ballot, or even if they do and don't want to go through the trouble of mailing it. So they can go down and vote at any time during business hours, as I understand it.
Well, and because you don't have to go to a particular polling place, you can go to any of these drop-in centers. You can drop it in here, or I think Cindy's going to give us the other drop-in centers. You can go anywhere and drop your ballot.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, in addition to the City Clerk's office located at 735 Anacapa Street, we do have 6 additional drop-off centers. Braille Institute, which will be held in the auditorium at 2031 Delavina Street. Cleveland School, the multipurpose room at 123 Alameda Padre Serra. Grace Lutheran Church, the Fellowship Hall, located at 3869 State Street. Holy Cross Church, in the Parish Hall at 1740 Cliff Drive, Pilgrim Terrace, the Activity Center at 649 Pilgrim Terrace Drive, and lastly, the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, the Fleischman Auditorium at 2559 Puesta del Sol. And I would like to add, if voters are looking for additional information, aside from our phone number at 564-5309, they can also go to our website, which is sbcityvote.org, for additional information.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. House.
Thank you both.
I just have a couple quick questions. One, I've had people ask me about the polling places that they used to go to, and we talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating. Besides the phone number, that's 564-5309. Is that right?
5309.
Okay, just checking. But the polling places that we have traditionally gone to, if we get there just by habit or something, what will be there to help us find a polling place?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember House, that's a very good question. We did speak about that earlier, but I would like to also reiterate the fact that if they do go to a polling location that was previously used in 2007, there will be large fluorescent signs that do indicate that that is not a polling center, that the election is a vote-by-mail election, and the 7 additional drop-off centers will be listed on those signs. We have coordinated this process with those centers. We are mailing the signage. In addition, we will be contacting them each of those mornings to ensure that the signage is placed.
That's great. So that's on November 3rd.
Correct.
Right. And then the last thing is, I sort of have a concern that people, because it's a mail-in ballot, that on Monday, November 2nd, they might feel they could mail it in, or even on the 3rd, they might think, well, I'll just mail it in instead of going to my polling place. But am I correct in saying that the ballot has to have been received by you on the 3rd, that the postmark isn't going to count? It's when it is actually received to count?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember House, that's a very good point. We are telling voters if they have not mailed their ballot by Friday, October 30th, to not place it in a mailbox. They will have to deliver it to any of the 7 drop-off centers. As you stated, postmarks will not count, so we have to physically receive it in the city clerk's office by 8 p.m. on election evening.
All right, very good. And I just want to thank you for the pamphlet, the way, it was really well organized. And I thought they'd sent me a Spanish one, too. It took me just a minute to figure it out, but I like that everything is in Spanish and English. I think that's a great service. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us that update. We have public comment. We have Ruth Wilson to be followed by Cruzito Hurrell Cruz.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and City Council members. And I look over to the left and the right here, too. You should be included in this. I wanted to say that I've been reading a 10-volume series on the American Revolution. And it is truly amazing. It's very detailed. The spirit of the American people when they pulled together under such austere circumstances, outnumbered, under-equipped, relying on God. They knew they were in the hands of God. And there were miracle after miracle. It is just truly astounding. And the spirit of sharing with each other, pulling together, everything was treated equally. And I just pray right now, I lift you up to the Lord, and I pray for that spirit, Lord, to infuse Santa Barbara and all of our leaders, that spirit of sharing and pulling together and tightening our belts and doing whatever it takes, Lord. And please help it that the right people, the people that you can work with, will be put into office, Lord. And we pray for your values to really descend into our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Cruzita Cruz will be followed by A1E, AIE, the person.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me. I'm going to say a few comments in Spanish. To the camera, to los televidentes que están escuchando en Santa Bárbara, buenas tardes, soy Crucito Herrera Cruz, estoy corriendo para el concejal del municipio de Santa Bárbara, California, para este 3 de noviembre. Como dijeron los administradores, por favor, entreguen sus correos y sus folletos para votar el 30, el viernes, para que llegue en la administración para el 3, porque si no lo entregan antes en el correo, va a ser muy difícil para entregarlo en persona. Y también quiero dar gracias a las following organizations. I'd like to give public recognition also to the United States Postal Workers of the City of Santa Barbara for doing a tremendous job. On Monday, Tuesday, and the week prior, they were carrying pounds of literature. And so just on one block, we have to give them credit. They were carrying like books of literature. So we have to give thanks to all the United States postal workers in the city. We also got to let them know that they're part of this democratic process in this mail election ballot. Again, I would like to emphasize that there is no precinct or booth, drop-off hub center on the east side part of the community. I wanted to have that recognized. There's a lot of elderly seniors in that location, in that district. To be the city hall or a Cleveland school, it's kind of a distance. So I definitely want to put that on record and give recognition to the following organizations for allowing me to participate in this public forum. The Mesa Paper Association, the Santa Barbara Arts Collaborative, the Santa Barbara Channels 21 and 17, the League of Women Voters and Educational Fund, the Tour with Larry Nember, Santa Barbara Conservancy, the Citizens Planning Association, also the Upper East Association, Downtown Boys and Girls Club with the Up to Us program, Go Guys, Youth Council Forum with the Future Leaders of America 1235 group also, La Casa La Raza, Family Tafoya for their ungracious support, Gracia Molina the PIC for giving her support from San Diego, Celebraciones for Simon Castaneda. So I thank you very much, and my time is up. Vote for Crucito Herrera Cruz. History in the making.
Thank you. A1E, the person, followed by Maria Ross will be our last person. Last speaker.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I am AIE, pronounced I. I am I, the person. When others join, I, the person, becomes we, the people. Yesterday was the Candidates Forum focusing on youth. Two candidates, Kathy McCammon and Frank Hotchkiss, did not attend. It was discovered that Youth Cinema Media rents space from the city and is charged $700 per month. I request that you use funds from the CalGRIP grant to support the nonprofit organizations that provide dozens of programs and activities for youth. The MADIC is a group of sports and arts organizations, such as Turf to Surf, and I'm asking that you use the $800,000 of the CalGRIP grant that was misappropriated from the Office of Emergency Services. I'm asking that you fund the programs for youth, activities for youth. Please reduce the youth cinema media rent to $100 and pay them $700 per month for their work. Yesterday at the Youth Forum, mayoral candidate Bob Hansen stated that our government was a gang, our police were a gang, and I concur. For this reason, I stated that I was gang raped by my government and my school district. I cashed out $1.2 million in blue chip stock to defend myself against their attack. And then I had to pay $350,000 in capital gains tax. $250,000 from Randall Van Wolfswinkel is chump change. That I was illegally disqualified from the school board ballot is notable. That I could not get a politician or the media to give a hootie toot.
Thank you, Kate.
Is
Maria
bizarre.
Ross. Maria Ross is the last speaker. Okay, thank you. Then we will go on to our consent calendar. I have someone who'd like to speak on item number 5. Anybody else? We have nothing to read by title only. I don't think so. Let's go ahead and read the title, item 5.
Item number 5, agreements for after-school recreation programs.
Okay, Kate Smith.
Madam Mayor, I think it might be worth just saying 30 seconds on item 3, but I can wait for Kate.
Okay, let's do this one first. Ms. Smith?
Continuing on, the Gang Task Force Leadership Council is a cabal. 45 politicos gathered themselves, selected and appointed themselves to lead the efforts to reduce and intervene in gang activities. Salud Carbajal and Janet Wolf are the supervisorial representatives, and they asked about the research of the programs. Sheriff Brown said that the programs were from the Department of Justice. This is a problem, because in 1977, our government said that those programs dealing with youth have to come out of the Department of Education because the Department of Education knows how to deal with our youth. It was here in Santa Barbara that the school-to-prison pipeline was created as the Truancy and Parent Accountability Program. Please do not look surprised, Das Williams. Please. At the Youth and Children's Committee, chaired by Marty Bloom with Roger Horton and Das Williams, I complained about the fact that there's an unholy alliance between the schools and the juvenile justice. And you have given to Parks and Recreation the entire program of gang intervention and prevention. Your efforts are misguided. Major cities around the United States have rejected Gang Task Force Leadership Council programs. We are in a holocaust.
Thank you. We have we don't need to vote on that separately. Item number 3, do you want to read the title of it? And Mr. Williams wants to talk about it.
Item number 3, approval of funding for downtown parking garage lighting project.
Okay.
I didn't want to take much of the council's time. I just wanted to highlight the fact that this is a project that's going to save an enormous amount of energy. It's a retrofit of lights. 499,800 kilowatts. That's I believe that's half of a megawatt. That's a lot of energy savings, and I think that's just a very, very useful. It's going to be a retrofit on 4 garages, and the payback period is just over 1 year, meaning we're going to, a year after putting the stuff in, we're already going to start saving money which is just wonderful news, and I think part of the great efforts that the city has made in terms of reducing energy usage.
Thank you. Okay, that's item number 3. Okay, anybody else? I'll entertain a motion.
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Item number 10.
Report from the
I'm
Finance
sorry,
Committee.
report from the Finance Committee. Ms. Schneider?
Thank you. The Finance Committee met earlier today and talked about the securitization of Prop 1A funds that the state is looking into some legislation on how this borrowing is going to occur. We approved the staff recommendation. It should be coming to council next week for discussion and a vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 8.
Item number 8, Central Coast Water Authority Board Member Assignment.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, Madam Mayor,
Armstrong.
members of the council, Councilmember Falcone, who's our representative on the Central Coast Water Authority Board, has indicated that she would like to step down from that role. And Councilmember Williams, who's the alternate, has indicated he doesn't want to step up to that role, and so we need the council to appoint a new representative to the board, at least through the remainder of the calendar year, and then we would come back to the new council when you do your council liaison assignments and other assignments and make an appointment for next calendar year.
Right, yeah, just to be very clear, this would be for the CCWA meetings of October 22nd, November 19th, and December 17th. And I think last year somebody said that the December meeting was canceled, so for 2 or 3 meetings.
Yeah, this is, Madam Mayor, this is
Falcone?
an organization that takes care of oversight for the state water
Right.
that we receive here on the South Coast. And as a participating member, the City of Santa Barbara has a voting member, which is not a liaison. It is an actual voting member. And so that, in that I would like to step down from that, it takes this council to actually make a vote to replace that voting member as opposed to just changing liaison assignments. It's a little more complicated. So I've enjoyed my time there. It's been a wonderful organization. And I know Mr. Williams has served in my place when I haven't been there. And Das?
Well, I just had a suggestion of a nomination. I think this is should be a meritocracy, and we've already seen Mr. Francisco have an enormous amount of interest in this area. I serve the city on the Cachuma Operations Maintenance Board and Cachuma Conservation Release Board. So it means that I'm doing a lot of the water stuff, but I think we need more than one council member involved in the water issue. And so I'd be pleased to nominate Mr. Francisco.
I'd be happy to
this
second
post.
that. And I've not only served on this board, but also as the Water Commission liaison. And so there is a tremendous amount of good that inures to the city through the consistency of someone who's really taking on a subject matter, if you will. And so I'd be happy to see Mr. Francisco step in if he's willing.
Sure, and I just wanted to be real clear because I also served in that position quite a while ago, but this is it's a good board. You have to file a Form 700 with them, and this would only be for the 3 meetings, or if they cancel one, it'd be less, because I don't want to tie the hands of the next council. The next council will be figuring out their own liaisons and so on. So
It's the remainder of my term.
Right. Okay, Mr. Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say that I would be happy to serve in this role for the remainder of Councilmember Falcone's term, and I have no intention of tying anybody's hands in the future. I have a great deal of interest in this area and currently serve as liaison to the Water Commission, and this is something that I would be happy to take on.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item number 9.
Item number 9, establishment of purchasing debarment procedures. Recommendation that council adopt, by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara establishing the grounds and procedures for the debarment of non-responsible contractors who seek contracts with the city.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of
Go ahead.
council. Bob Samario, Acting Finance Director. And I have with me Bill Hornung, our General Services Manager. And we're here to recommend adoption of a resolution that establishes purchasing debarment procedures. And just by way of background, as you know, we each year enter into millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts for supplies and services, for the maintenance of our facilities, and also for major construction contracts. And every now and then, not often, but every now and then, we come across a contractor that is either irresponsible or acting unethically. For example, falsifying information on bids, or in terms of performance, not performing up to what there should be. And right now, we don't have the ability to bar or prevent any contractor who is either responsible or unethical from bidding on future work of the city. And so we believe it's appropriate to have such procedures. Unfortunately, as I said, legally we couldn't do that unless we have some kind of administrative procedures or due process in place that's adopted by council in order for us to do that. So we're here today to essentially have you adopt a proposed set of procedures for that process. Just by way of sort of process, we back in May 19th of 2009, this year, we came to the Ordinance Committee and we presented to them proposed amendments to our purchasing code. And at that time, we also presented a proposed draft of these procedures, and they did approve forwarding those procedures to the full council. They did have some recommendations, which we've incorporated into what you have today. We've worked with the city attorney's office to incorporate some of those changes, and we are now back here today to go over those, and Mr. Hornung will be the one who will present a summary of those procedures.
Okay. Mr.
Unless there are any questions, we can move forward.
I don't think so. Go ahead, please.
I'll let Bob get set up with the overhead.
Uh-huh.
Good afternoon. What I'm going to do is kind of walk you through an overview of the debarment procedure. If you have any questions in each section, I can take them at that time, or I can take the questions at the end of the presentation. As you may be aware, when the city goes out for bid, we award contracts to the low, responsive, and responsible bidder. Debarment is a process where the city declares a contractor to be non-responsible. And what that does, it prevents them from bidding on future work with the city for a period of time, depending on the nature of what they've done. It could be a permanent debarment, or it could be 1 year or 3 years. You know, again, as Bob talked about, we need to have a process in place. The ability to bid on city work is a property right. So a debarment process is required to preserve their due process rights. And because the city intends to only do business for responsible and honest contractors, we need to have a debarment and suspension process in place to not only protect the city, it protects the public, and it promotes fair and open competition. Because in some of the surveys that I've done with suppliers, that's one thing they're concerned about, is making sure that there's a level playing field. And if someone's providing substandard materials or things of that nature, it could give them a price advantage. And again, the name of the game is the low bid. So this makes sure that we're getting what we're paying for. The procedure has some of the grounds for debarment. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. Again, if they violate any state, federal, or municipal ordinance, it could be our living wage ordinance, it could be prevailing wages for, that are required, like in federal jobs. That could be grounds for debarment. The next one is if they violate the government code section. And those really deal with trying to influence, or if they're getting donations, not declaring, you know, the sources of funds and things of that nature. And then we can recognize debarment by another government agency. And this kind of actually codifies existing practice. If we're getting federal funds, or maybe some state grants may have some strings to it saying you can't do business with contractors that we have debarred, and this rolls that into this process. Debarment requests can be initiated by any city department or division. What they'll do is they'll make a request, they'll provide evidence and state the reasons for debarment.
Once that request is made, the contractor will be notified that they're being considered for debarment. They may request an administrative hearing. A debarment hearing officer would be appointed, and they kind of follow a process similar that the city uses for other administrative hearings. The hearing officer will use the evidence that's presented at the hearing. I'll cover that in the hearing. Also, a contractor may be suspended if it's in the public interest. So if they're doing code violations on a construction, we may want to suspend that work. That's sort of an option. It's not, that'd be on a case-by-case basis. And that was one of the concerns that was brought up when we originally brought the procedure to council. Again, under the hearing, it's going to be informal like we do for our administrative hearings. The rule of evidence is going to be the preponderance of evidence, so we're not going to use the statutes for evidence code. It's going to be an informal process. The city will make its case, the contractor will make their case, and the hearing officer will make a decision based on the evidence presented. The decision will be mailed to all the parties. And we have an appeal process, but not all decisions can be appealed. It's only if the contract has been awarded city contracts in an aggregate of $500,000 over a 5-year period. If they're recommended for a debarment, then they can appeal to city council. And then the city will maintain a list of debarred contractors, and that'll also include the term. So it'll say, they're debarred until October 31st, 2012, or whatever that period happens to be. And just like in other administrative hearings, they have a right to a judicial review, and the duration, the time frame in which they can file an appeal or request a judicial review would be governed by the civil code. So that's the procedure at a very high level. I'd be glad to take any questions you might have.
Okay, are there any questions? I don't have any speaking slips on these, so Mr. House, go ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you very much for this. As this came through us, I think at Ordinance Committee, it just made really good sense, and it just sort of straightens out the process. And so I move that we adopt by reading of title only this resolution of the council.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
I think this is very much in step with what we asked for at the Ordinance Committee, first of all. So thank you. Secondly, I wanted to make sure, because it's not called out in particular, but it seems to be well within the grounds for debarment, but sidestepping or failing to pay, whether willfully or not willfully, prevailing wage in contracts that are appropriate for that, or is that separate because we have a separate ordinance for capital projects, or tell me how this relates.
Yeah.
And I'll let Scott, if he wants to add anything. But this procedure applies to all contracts for general services, materials, and construction contracts, and that's where prevailing wage would come into play. Probably on an individual project, it kind of depends if they falsify the records, that might lend itself to one act. If it is a misclassification, they may not be debarred. But if they have a history of a pattern of doing the misclassifications, then we could debar them. So it kind of depends on the particular circumstances.
And Madam Mayor,
Go ahead, Mr.
Williams, I might add, that would only apply to public works projects which receive state or federal money, because those are the only kinds of contracts for which the city requires prevailing wage. And we would probably defer that determination to the State Department of Industrial Relations, which enforces the prevailing wage requirement. And if they determined that someone had violated prevailing wage laws, we'd use that as a basis for debarment.
I just, bring up the issue because, especially in this work climate, I think it becomes more of an issue, and you tend to get more contractors that people don't know about, that have less of a history, and inevitably that means some folks who are willing to sidestep the rules. And whether that's on safety or whether that's on what wages they're supposed to pay, I think that's serious. And obviously the state, I think they only have 3 inspectors for this entire region, can't really effectively enforce that on their own. So it's left to us to do some level of enforcement and accountability on contracts. So I hope that we are remaining vigilant on that issue in particular, but on all of these issues and all these grounds for holding contractors accountable.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we already do that? I thought we
it was
did.
already
Motion
made.
second. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Item number 10.
Item number 10, joint participation agreement for Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board bond issuance to finance improvements to the South Coast Conduit, including recommendation A, the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the execution and delivery of a joint participation agreement with the Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board and authorizing certain other actions related thereto.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor,
Sure,
members
Ms.
of council. I'm Rebecca Bjork, Water Resources Manager. We're just switching over between audio-visual devices here, I hope. I'll take this interval while I hope it's loading up to introduce Kate Reese, who's the General Manager for the Kachuma Operations and Maintenance Board, who's here today, as well as David Broadsley, who's the financial advisor to, who's been hired by COMB for this transaction. Thank you very much. So the item that we have today is participation agreement to allow the city to participate in a bond that's going to be issued to finance capital improvements for COMB. Kachuma Operations Maintenance Board is a joint powers authority that operates the facilities that deliver water to the South Coast from Kachuma Lake. And that includes the intake tunnel, the intake tower, the tunnel, and the South Coast Conduit, which is the large pipeline that provides water to Goleta, Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, and Montecito. And this slide shows a little bit of the COMB facilities, starting up here at the intake tower, coming through the south portals about here. They deliver water to the Goleta plant, at the Glen Annie turnout, to the Cater plant, and then the treated water is continued to taken on down and delivered to Montecito and Carpinteria. A couple of years ago, COMB undertook an evaluation of its facilities to make sure that they were in good condition. The pipeline was installed when the project was built in the 1950s, and so they really wanted to do a comprehensive evaluation of maintenance needs. So they evaluated the facilities for the condition of the facilities, the capacity to make sure that the original capacity was still intact and that we were meeting needs, and for the reliability of the facilities. And by that, really, are there vulnerabilities or is there something that we could potentially interrupt delivery of service? They developed a fairly lengthy project list, which is included here, and I'm not going to go through it in detail because a subset of this project list is what actually is being identified for funding by the COMB bond. Having identified that project list, they next turned to figuring out how to fund it and have been, I think, very creative and thoughtful in their approach to funding these projects in that they have determined that probably the easiest way for member units, which is all of the South Coast water agencies, to afford these projects is if we don't see a big change to the amount of funding that we provide to COMB each year. And in order to do that, they determined that they would set a bond amount that would give debt proceeds not the debt proceeds wouldn't be the determinant, that the bond amount, the debt service would be the determining factor. They wanted the debt service to be about $1.1 million, which is about 70% of the recent capital improvement budget for COMB. And that would leave about $400,000 for other capital improvements each year that could then continually be funded by the agencies. And this would allow us to do these bigger projects, but also have some ongoing level of effort for projects that also needed doing that might come up as things go along, or the projects that don't make it onto the COMB bond fund list. They also, one of the projects, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more, is the second barrel, which is a second pipeline to be installed from the south portal of the tunnel to the Glen Annie the Corona Del Mar treatment plant, which serves Goleta, and this shows the different alignments that they considered. When I talked about reliability, this is a really steep and difficult area to get to, and there was concern that if this pipeline was damaged, the primary water supply for all of the South Coast communities would be interrupted, and we would really be pretty much out of luck for getting water. Once we get it past here, we can sort of work around through our distribution systems, but if this pipeline goes, it's somewhat of Achilles heel. So providing a second pipe does two things. One, it provides increased reliability if one of the pipes should get washed out in a landslide or break. The other is it allows us to take one of the lines off out of service for maintenance. This project was included in the Prop 50 regional plan that was put forward, and we were allocated $3.2 million in grant funding towards this project. So another great source of funding for it. So this list represents the projects that are included for bond funding. The Second Barrel project, which we just talked about, Mission Creek Crossing and Fish Passage project, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about. Vent rehabilitation by doing the vents allow the water to flow freely through the pipe because it sort of gets trapped or airlocked without proper vents, and these actually address capacity issues. Inline valves to allow isolation, corrosion repairs, 2 additional creek crossings where the pipeline goes across creeks and need additional strengthening and repair, and then a right-of-way definition program, which is the pipeline isn't necessarily very well marked along its full length, and obviously it's a critical facility for us. So this is a program to go out and better identify where it is and mark it so that it's less likely to be hit or damaged or built on top of. So the total bond cost estimate for the bond-funded projects is $18.1 million. The idea is to get through as much of this project with these projects with bond funding as we can, and then continue with the sort of cash funding to address the remaining projects after we end up expending the bond money. So this is a picture of the Mission Creek crossing, and you can see this concrete down here. The pipeline was actually damaged in a storm several years ago, and to repair it, they just went out and patched it and poured concrete over it. It is a fish barrier, and it's also sort of a accident waiting to happen. It hasn't been properly repaired. So this is a very high priority project, and one of the ones that will be funded by the bond. So the status of approvals for this project is that it went to Water Commission in June of this year, and Finance Committee heard this item and recommended adoption of the agreement in their August meeting. The Goleta Water District has approved participation. Montecito Water District has also approved participation, the issuance of the bond, I should say. It does require unanimous approval. Montecito is not going to participate in the bond. They have yesterday approved a contribution agreement, by which they have made a promise to contribute their responsible share to each of these projects as the projects are being completed, but they will not be participating in the bond. The Carpinteria Valley Water District has heard this item once and did not approve the item, but they, in not approving the item, they did make sure that it would come back to them at a future hearing, and they are going to hear the item again tomorrow at their board meeting. And the San Ynez Valley Water Conservation District has indicated that they will hear the item and approve it after all of the other agencies have gotten done with their approvals. San Ynez Valley Water Conservation District has also asked to be indemnified as part of this project because they are not participating in the bond. And so there's an indemnification agreement that we're asking for approval for today as well. Montecito has also asked to be indemnified. However, we did not get that request in a timely manner, so we will probably have to come back to you at a future time to get your approval to indemnify them as well. So if you have any additional questions, I could try and answer them, but we've also got Kate Reese and David Broadsley if you have technical questions.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add now? Or? Yeah. Kate. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Kate Rees, the General Manager for Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board. I don't really have anything further to add. We have talked about this at length. Doss Williams, of course, is president of our COMB board. Rebecca's done a wonderful job with supporting it. I would just like to ask your support so that we can get the funding in place and carry out these very important infrastructure projects for our critical water supply, which supplies about 80% of the water to the South Coast. So I just encourage you to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I don't have any slips. That's what I was looking for. Ms. Falcone.
Thank you. Rebecca, I have a question. It might be a Mr. Wiley question, and it may be just quite simply something that I don't know. But the indemnification of ID1, I understand that they're going to be participating in the bond. However, there's some argument or some disagreement with respect to their fair share on for what, as I understand it, put simply. But Montecito has a similar complaint that they don't want to pay what we think is their fair share for X, Y, and Z if it doesn't reach them or some such thing. They're not participating in the bond. Now, my question goes to the indemnification agreement with ID1 as participants, but an indemnification agreement with Montecito as a non-participant in the whole. Help me.
Madam Mayor,
Can I
Councilmember
correct one thing
Falcone.
first?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to refer
What
to
the legal
Kate
answer?
to respond. But I just want to clarify. Montecito is participating in the projects. They won't participate in the bond. They will participate financially. ID1 is not participating in the bond or the project costs.
They're not participating,
No,
so
because
that
these
never
are-
did work out.
These are all projects on the South Coast, and there is no benefit. They don't have any facilities on the South Coast, so there's no direct benefit.
Maybe you could go into the differences between the two, because it's a little tangled.
We have ended up with a lot of agreements, and it is confusing. As Ms. Bjork mentioned, the ID number 1 is a Kachuma member unit, but they are located in the San Ynez Valley, and so all of these projects are in the South Coast, so they do not pay for any part of South Coast conduit facilities work. They never have, not even in the construction of the Kachuma project. So they are not participating in the bond issuance at all. They will not fund any portion of any of the projects. They wanted, and this is part of the joint participation agreement and also part of Combs' official statement. It's stated many, many times that they will not be responsible for repayment of any portion of the bond. However, they wanted a separate standalone agreement, a sort of a belt and suspenders type of agreement, to assure that they would not at any time be responsible for repayment as a Combs member unit. So that's just a sort of extra step that they requested.
And in that ID1 is, I mean, it's questionable as to why they belong anyway, but I understand the transference down to Lompoc, as I've been the alternate to this for a while. But Montecito I have a problem with.
Okay. Montecito Water District is paying 100% their full share of every one of these projects. So they are paying, there's no difference with their participation as there is with the cities. The only difference is that they have enough cash to self-fund it, and they decided to fund it with cash rather than borrow the money. So they are paying their full share. There's no reduction. They have not indicated that they're going to withhold any money. They are self-funding their share. So they will not participate in the bond issuance in repayment, but they are absolutely going to pay all of their share of each of the projects and the agreement that was put in place instead is patterned after the joint participation agreements, and it's called a contribution agreement with Combs. So Combs will approve that document on October 26th.
So
There's really no difference.
The only way the indemnification comes in to play then is if the other member units default. And Montecito is held as responsible as a member unit as the others.
Correct.
And they
But
want to be
even-
indemnified against that.
Right,
Is
but
that
even
what's
with
going on
default within the bond issuance, the other member units are not obligated to pick up the share of a member unit who defaults. The only reason that they wanted to self-fund it is to avoid some of the fees and interest and so on. The last item that will come before you on another day is a second indemnification agreement. This would be with Montecito, just like ID1, only because they are not actually signing the bond documents. So it's just a lot of, sort of separate legal protection, as I understand it.
Madam Mayor.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Wyden.
Councilmember Falcone, if I could add a couple of points. I think it's been clarified about ID1 as a Kachuma member unit. They were one of the entities for which we needed unanimous approval, or for which Combs needs unanimous approval to issue bonds. But they weren't participating. These projects have nothing to do with ID1. So it wasn't unreasonable for them to ask to be released and indemnified as a result of the bond issue. So, if, as you said, if there were a bond default and people were getting sued because that's what would happen if there were bond default. ID1 might be sued because of their approval of this, but then they would have to be absolutely defended and indemnified by the COMB member units. That's perfectly reasonable request. Montecito is a similar situation. They're participating in these projects, but they're self-funding, and it's not unreasonable for them to ask to be indemnified with respect to the bond issue. Or I suppose, nowadays there's also an issue with respect to disclosures, and the SEC, the federal government, has an ongoing disclosure requirement in terms of making sure that you advise the SEC of any change in your financial circumstances. So it's not unreasonable that ID1 and Montecito would be indemnified and held harmless because they're not really participating in the bond issue. One of the things that, upon the advice of the city's bond council, we insisted on was in the joint participation agreement between the COMB member units that are part of this bond issue, that the city of Santa Barbara be indemnified with respect to all of the representations from the other COMB member units. So for example, with Goleta or Montecito, they are making disclosure statements and representations about their financial status, their ability to pay these bonds, and the city is being indemnified with respect to those statements. We're not going to be liable for any statements that we don't make. Conversely, we're perfectly willing to indemnify and defend others for any statements that we make.
You have a series of reciprocal agreements going back and forth.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams, do you have something?
I wanted to have a couple questions that have come up just in terms of constituents. I had Arby Schwold and Steve Dunn meet with me today, and they had lots of interesting questions. So I did have one transfer one of those questions to you because I think it's a good question. I think out there has been the perception that this is a redundancy for the whole South Coast Conduit, and it's not. It's for a section. And everybody's usually on board with condition and reliability. What the sticky point gets into is capacity, because people who have gone through the water wars of past years go, well, does that mean that there's going to be more water and therefore more growth? And it has not been, as I understand it, our intention to increase the capacity of the South Coast Conduit beyond its original capacity. And the original capacity, as I understand it, was reduced because Goleta Water District made some improvements to Corona Del Mar. And so but the question that I have is, if the improvements are from the South Portal to Corona Del Mar, why does this help with the capacity past Corona Del Mar if that's what was, if the capacity, if essentially the bottleneck is at Corona Del Mar, how does something that's before Corona Del Mar help with the bottleneck?
There's a couple of things. First of all, to answer your question, the South Coast Conduit second barrel project or second pipeline project is about 8,000 feet long. It goes from the south portal of the Tecolote Tunnel to Corona Del Mar. And it does not cover the entire South Coast Conduit. It's just a section of pipe that is critical and uppermost within the system. And as Rebecca mentioned, it is a very difficult area for us to ever be able to shut down. If anything happens to it, we're all out of water. So it's not the whole conduit, to confirm that question. The other part of it is, over time, and it is true, in the Kachuma project itself was built in the 1950s, and there were different not so much improvements, but ways by which water needed to go from that section of pipeline into Corona Del Mar. And this was long ago. This was in the 60s and 70s, where it reduced the original capacity of that pipeline. All we're trying to do, again, to confirm your statement, Councilmember Williams, is to restore the original capacity of the pipeline. It is not to increase capacity. There will be no extra water. There's no additional water flowing. It's to get us back where we were in the 1950s. By doing that, that then allows us to be able to deliver water through the system as designed. In water going into the treatment plant, it isn't just a bottleneck right at that turnout I mean, that's where the facilities are. But we also have a lot of improvements that need to be made because of corrosion. In part of the Tecolote Tunnel itself, there's a lot of hydrogen sulfide gas, which has damaged the inside of the pipeline, and also the south portal structure itself. If you look at that, everything is completely corroded. Some of those appurtenances could really fall off. That vault has to be completely replaced. That's at the top end. And there are other appurtenances along the line that also need to be, improved and replaced. The third thing is, again, to be able to have a redundant system so that we can have part of it out of service while we work on the other part was also part of the project. So it's not just the capacity, it's also to improve or rehab the system. So it's rehabilitation, redundancy, and restoration of capacity. So that 8,000 feet is really a rehab job. The establishing the original capacity is right around Corona Del Mar treatment plant, because right now we can't get the amount of water that was designed into that plant. And so then once you get the water into the plant that actually can flow into it, it then comes out back into the South Coast Conduit as treated water goes into Goleta's system. It goes back into the South Coast Conduit as raw water after Goleta pulls theirs off, and that then continues on to Laurel Reservoir, which then goes into Cater Water Treatment Plant for treatment to the South Coast. So that section is really not only for restoration of the original capacity issues, but also to rehab that whole section, put it in a slightly different alignment so that if we do ever have a problem with the original line, we don't perhaps lose both of them because of landsliding or earthquake. I mean, potentially if we have a huge earthquake, we're all out of luck, but any kind of land movement. So there's just several parts to that one section that needed to be improved or rehabilitated at one time.
It's a very good answer. I guess the other question that came up, of course, is the idea that folks who are using more than their original share, say because of state water or others, should be required to pay more, which is kind of to Carpinteria's point, why they had a problem with this at first, and since we've had discussions. And the conclusion I think that we are at is that we are going to have revisit some cost share formula that creates a penalty for overuse of the pipe, whether that's because they're extracting state water or whether that's because they're using it for some other purpose, such as transfer of groundwater or other use. To those who feel like this should not be used to facilitate, additional transfers of water, I think that's a good point, that we're going to have a penalty on overuse of the pipe, or looking at some kind of cost structure where that would be determined equitably. Right. And part of that is also going to be asking private contractors that use the pipe for their state water to pay into the repairs, because there's private entities like La Cumbra and Raytheon and Morehart who have contracts for the state water, but they don't pay into the repair at this point, and we need to make sure that they do. So those are some issues that have been brought up by this process. It's made it go slower, the fact that it was brought up by this process, but it's a good thing that it was brought up by the process, and we may be able to address those through this process and through the things that we're doing afterwards.
May I just address just a couple of points to your comments? It is correct that there have been issues raised primarily by Carpinteria, but I did want to just clarify a couple of things. CCWA does deliver the state water through the Kachuma Project facilities. It goes into the lake, and then it's delivered through the same Kachuma Project South Coast facilities. But every single member unit of CCWA pays a charge already for storage and conveyance through the South Coast Conduit facilities. The Bureau of Reclamation required that through a Warren Act agreement, so they already pay a charge. So those agencies who take more state water pay a higher charge. That's just to get the water through. But there was not any, as Councilmember Williams indicated, there was not a component by which there was payment by any of the agencies to contribute a cost to the upkeep of the system, or in this case, maintenance or repair. You all do that through your contribution to COMB. But there are a couple of other agencies who have not had to do that. They just pay the conveyance fee. So we will be trying to speak with them and see if we can enter into an agreement between COMB and those agencies to offset some of those costs. The issue with regard to Carpinteria, bringing up, what the problem may be with regard to what was referred to just now as overuse of the system. We have no problem delivering everybody's water during normal, winter time or when there's not a high demand. Our biggest issue is peak demand. Just as the city plans very carefully with water supply for drought conditions we really have to plan our water supplies around drought. All of the agencies do, including the city. It's peak capacity that we have a problem with guaranteeing that we can continue delivering the water. And with Carpinteria being at the end of the line, there is concern on their part that by the time everybody pulls off what they need, that their fair share isn't left over at the end of the line. And that has to be equitable. So we do need to look into how to make it equitable, and we will be entering into a study to do that to make sure that everybody's being treated fairly.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. House, you have something?
Sounds like there's an awful lot of work still to do with all of these agreements that you're talking about. Oh, I'm so sure. The private parties paying in and all of that and all this equitable stuff. And it's not a majority vote. This is a unanimous vote that's required of all the different agencies. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes,
the partners, if you will.
The COMB board must have a unanimous vote. That is one director from each of the 5-member units. The individual, because it is over $1 million, that's just part of our requirement. The individual member unit boards or council only have to approve this with a majority.
Understood.
With regards to the other agreements with other parties, those we haven't started on. We are just about there on all the agreements relative to issuing the bond documents, and that's the main thing. First, we have to have the money before we can do the projects. We will not have the other agreements in place with these other agencies prior to that time. This has just really come up relatively recently, and I have to start on those negotiations.
What happens if they just disagree to
Well,
do it?
then we can't force them. They are not a member of COMB. There's no, COMB doesn't have the authority, but I'm very confident that they will do the right thing and participate in the agreements.
A lot of reliance on goodwill.
And convincing.
Yeah, and convincing good
We hope.
work. Okay.
But I'm sure it'll work out.
All right, I guess. And so then in these mutual agreements for indemnification, just to keep everybody's interests separate, and so it doesn't get really tangled if there's an issue of one another. Okay. Well, this makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad I'm not the representative to COMB board, and I just admire you. And for the next little while here, I guess, Mr. Francisco, you're going to really get a. CCW, yeah, that's right. I see now. It shows you how much but I do recognize how important this is. So I move that we adopt the staff recommendation A and B.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you, Ms. Reese. And thank you, Mr. Bosley. Okay. We're on to item 11, please.
Item number 11, public hearing regarding proposed solid waste rate changes.
Okay. Mr. McIntosh is making a beeline here. And we've seen this before, but this is the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, Council, my name is Stephen McIntosh. I'm the Environmental Services Supervisor, and this item we have before you is a public hearing of the new solid waste rates for the business sector for the collection of recyclables, trash, green waste, and food scraps. What we'll be talking about are some of the key milestones or project milestones, what the goals were of the actual rates or the new rate structure that is being proposed, a summary of what we were able to achieve with the new rates, some sample impacts to customers, and the outreach efforts that were made to the business business community during the months of March through June. or month of March through July, and then finally to conduct the public hearing. Some of the key dates, the actual rate study was conducted between April of 2008 and February 2009. We came to City Council on March 3rd of this year, asking for your conceptual approval to move forward. That spent the next 4 months outreaching to the business community and presentations to business groups and meetings with business leaders. Inserts, and we'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. But then we came back to City Council in July, on July 21st, to report back on our outreach efforts to the business community and requesting your direction to move forward with a Proposition 218 notice. We did that in the latter part of July through the first several weeks of August. And here we are today on the 13th of October at a public hearing. And if approved by Council today, we will move forward with a resolution to Council on the 27th. And if that is approved, the new rates would become effective on November 1st. So the goals of the rate changes, as we were referring back to the Solid Waste Strategic Plan from 2005, really consist of three major pieces. One is to encourage businesses to divert more material from the landfill. The Tahegas landfill receives approximately 200,000 tons per year. About half of that's coming from the city of Santa Barbara. It's slated to run out of permanent capacity by 2023 at this rate. There are lots of projects being discussed and worked on a regional basis, but from the city's standpoint, we simply want to put less material in the landfill. Establishing new rates for food scraps recovery and composting. We currently have a pilot program that's been in place since April of 2007, but we do not have a rate. So we haven't been charging anyone for this service. It's been conducted with 12 participants free of charge for the last 2.5 years. So these new rates this new rate structure contains rates for the food scraps program. And then finally, the Solid Waste Committee directed us several times to make customers' bills easier to understand, so they can look at it and know exactly what their service levels are, allowing them to self-audit or determine what their recycling rate is, if they can recycle more, how much they're paying for each container, and that sort of thing. Backing up on number one, really encouraging the business sector to divert more. We've done a lot of analysis and a lot of number crunching, and the data shows that that is the sector in the city where we can get the most bang for our buck at this point. There's a great deal of potential of divertible material in the business sector. So what the rate changes achieved, or what we were able to achieve with the rate changes and how we move forward with that, was with both franchised haulers, both Marburg and Allied Waste. We had an expert consultant on staff, a PhD in econometrics, who helped design a rate model. And we achieved in almost all cases where customers can save money on their trash bills if they increase their diversion, if they put more material into recycling, food scraps, or green waste containers and less into their trash containers. One of the major assumptions of the model is that we would divert, by the end of a 12-month period, 14% of the waste that's currently being disposed by the business sector. Some sample impacts to customers. This is a small-sized business. I believe it's 8 cubic yards per week. No, this isn't 8 cubic yards. It can't be. These are just cart customers. But if you'll look up on the first row where it says 0% diversion, those 2 tan carts represent a customer that has all trash service. Their current bill would be $121 per month with the existing rate structure that we have in place now. The new bill, if they do nothing, will go up 60 cents, a less than 1% change. These customers, we were essentially trying to achieve neutrality or no change in their rates. A lot of them can really go nowhere with the services that they have now, or they can't change a whole lot and divert a whole lot more. But the can cart customers are the one exception to the rule where we didn't achieve exactly what we were looking for in the rates going up for trash or for folks that aren't diverting anymore. But if you go down to the 50% diversion rate where there's one recycling container and one trash container, the current bill is $60.53 and the new bill would increase by 30 cents. And then if they were to divert 66% of their material, meaning at least 2/3 of it would be in food and recycling or some combination of green waste and food and recycling, their bill would go from $40.35 to $40.55. The more important way to look at this table, though, is to move through diagonally where you can see their current bill. If they're at $121 per month, let's see if I can make this laser's not working. But if they're at $121 per month with the current, oh yeah, okay, thank you. The current bill, and they get to 50% diversion, which is readily doable by most businesses. They can actually go from $121 per month to 60, just under $61 per month. Same for customers 50%. They can get down to $40.55 per month if they can go from 50 to 66. So a medium-sized business, I believe this is the 12 cubic yard example. If a business is at 0% diversion, this first row, their bill is currently about $741 a month. It would go to $877.90 or $878, a significant increase. This is where we really wanted to make sure that there was an impact with the new rate structure where a business would be motivated to do something. If they're diverting nothing, they're going to pay more for putting all of their material in the trash. If a customer's at 50% and they're paying $551 a month now, they actually will see a reduction of 8.5% or down to $505 essentially per month. And similarly for a 66% diversion scenario, they would go from $493 to $366. Just like the earlier customer example, though, if they go diagonally through this chart, they can go from $741 a month down to $505 a month by increasing the diversion or introducing half recycling capacity or half diversion capacity. And they could go from $741 a month all the way down to $366 if they get to 66% diversion. That, by the way, is our target that we've stated in our P3s. That's where we are trying to get businesses to arrive with their diversion levels. Our stated city goal is different, but this is what we're saying for just the individual customer. We think businesses should be able to get to close to 66% diversion. And then a large business customer, this is 48 cubic yards per week. This customer would be paying $27.53, if they're diverting nothing currently, if they had all trash containers. And it would go up to $35.92, almost 31% increase. This is significant. This is a large increase. This customer is throwing everything in the trash. But again, this is the policy objective that we were trying to achieve. We wanted trash to be less appealing financially to a business. We wanted recycling or diversion efforts or diversion services to be more appealing. So if this customer is at 50%, their current bill would be $21.30. It would go to $20.77, a slight decrease. And I failed to mention in the last two examples, but 50% was our threshold or our fulcrum, where we said if a customer does have 50% diversion, that's where they should start to see some savings. If they get significantly above that, they should see significant savings. Significantly below that, significantly higher bills on a monthly basis. So if this customer got to, or was at 66%, they would go from $17.89 a month to $15.56. Again, moving diagonally through here, 0% diversion. If that customer goes to 50%, they can save $700 approximately per month by diverting just half of their waste stream. If they can get to 66% diversion, they can get down to $15.56 per month. A significant savings. And again, we think 66% diversion is doable for most businesses. So as I was saying earlier, the outreach that we provided to businesses consisted of quite a few things between March and July. Several presentations to the major business groups, the Chamber, the Santa Barbara Restaurant and Lodging Association, the the downtown organization, and we spoke with the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We never presented to them, but we did speak to their president. We had several public meetings. One of them is available online to be viewed at sbrecycles.org if anybody's interested. We placed messages in utility bills and sent out direct mailers to all businesses in the city. We've developed websites on the new rate structure, the proposed rate structure, and the food scraps recovery program. And we've been providing a lot of technical assistance to medium and large businesses throughout the entire period, and we're continuing to do that today. So at this point, we recommend that Mayor and Council, you open the public hearing to receive public comment on the proposed changes to the rates for the business sector's solid waste services. And on that note, we have received one letter of opposition.
Okay, and I'd be glad to open the public hearing. I see no...
For the record, we didn't receive any request to speak.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll close the public hearing. And are there any questions or anything from anybody, Mr. House or Mr. Francisco?
I just wanted to make a comment, and I wanted to thank you for the outreach and the way that you and your staff were working closely, and Mr. McIntosh for with the people that you met at the different organizations and answering their questions. Questions like, share what happens when they share dumpsters, or if they don't think they have enough space to be able to do this, even though they're willing. And the creative and innovative approaches that you came up with and continue to do, where you're effectively tailoring the program for little neighborhoods of businesses and specific situations. I just really admire that, and I thought you did a really great job in communicating. And perhaps maybe we'll take the lack of attendance here today as a signal that you've done a tremendous job, because there was consternation, there were concerns, and those concerns came up the way they should be in those kinds of discussions. And I just felt, at least the feedback I got and my personal observation was that you were very, very open and took those concerns as constructive criticism, and then retooled the program as you went through it. And I saw changes happening as it went on through. I hope you had a good experience, because that's what it appeared was going on. How was it for you?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember House, it was actually very challenging and enjoyable at the same time. We approached it as though we were just trying to present the facts and to get the business community's input and to let us know what the problems were going to be, so that we had an idea of what we needed to work on, how to resolve those problems, like the space constraint issue. So I appreciate the question and the opportunity to answer that. I wanted to also say, though, something I left out a minute ago, though. Some of the more important feedback that we did receive from the business community was, make sure you have signage, very good signage for this food scraps program. We want to know what's compostable. They were overall accepting of the program, supportive of the approach. We got a lot of thumbs up in all the presentations we made to the business groups. So that was really satisfying as well. And they said, make sure you reach out to the largest generators, the bigger customers, before November 1st, and we have done that. We've touched base with all those generators, and many of them have already started converting their services over to diversion.
Mm-hmm. And well, the one other thing that you had mentioned, it was in your presentation, but it was sort of went right by, was the revenue neutral. Overall arching revenue neutrality of this. It's not the way it's structured, and again, I probably should test my own understanding out here, but my understanding is that you've structured it so that the balance of the increases and the opportunity to decrease your own rate, that balances out, so the city's not getting like a windfall or something on making these changes. It's actually revenue neutral for the city side. And ultimately, my understanding is, if this becomes very successful, that perhaps rates will go back up to some degree, but this benefit or incentive side of the equation is still going to be there for those who want to participate fully. And am I accurate?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right.
You did a good job then. You taught me that. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. McIntosh, one of the main concerns expressed by people in the business community last time this was before City Council was the space constraint issue. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the number of businesses directly contacted. I realize that you sent out direct mail, but the number of businesses directly contacted and how often that turned out to be a significant problem. Because if you have, we have a lot of very forward-looking business people in this city who I think are eager to participate in programs of this kind if they think it'll make a difference. But if they can't participate because there just isn't enough room to put another container in, then that would be a serious problem. Then we would be forcing them to pay a burdensome increase when they really had no choice. So how, in the instances where you actually contacted businesses directly, how many times did that turn out to be a problem?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Francisco, we have contacted or been in contact with over 200 businesses over the last several months. The large generator category, 28 or 24 cubic yards or greater, there's 31 businesses in that class, and all of those we've been working with very closely. In the last 2 years or 2.5 years, there have been several situations where it just can't happen unless there's some sharing. If somebody has an enclosure over here and they have space for 1 3-yard dumpster for trash, they can't do anything else. They can't get another container in there. They have to share with their neighbor. In the last 2.5 years, we have never failed to come to an agreement with several businesses on a bin sharing agreement because it turns into cost savings for those businesses. I think that's the kicker for us, and that's why we've had 100% success with that. We did a block party for the 500 block of State Street a couple of weeks ago. Ed Holdren set us up in his restaurant early in the morning, and we had several businesses show up, and we put on the overhead all of the enclosures that were involved and where we'd have to put people's trash, recycling, food scraps, where everybody would have to share. We gave them all their sheets based on the cost estimates of current and new subscription levels, and we're moving forward with all the businesses on the 500 State or block of State Street to get them sharing and diverting as much as possible. So, to answer your question, I know we won't have 100% success or perfect success going into the future. I think it will be the minority of cases, though, where a business is not able to share with someone or we aren't able to come up with some sort of creative approach to taking care of their space constraints.
So you're saying that, as far as you know, all of the businesses that you've directly contacted have the ability to have the extra containers, either through sharing or existing space?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. Last week, the school district recycling committee met, and that's one of the big ones. In fact, it's the largest client, I believe. And just to put out there that the school district administration actually put into their own operating budget the savings that they're expecting now all the campuses to move to 50% or 66% depending on the campus. And so they're immediately seeing or expecting those savings, that those savings can go back into the classrooms as opposed to paying the trash haulers, which and this committee comprises of principals and administrators and teachers and students even, so from throughout the district, as well as county and city environmental services staff. So they're very excited to see that come on board, and through, I know, our work through the Environmental Services Division, we have down to the percentage of where they currently are by campus and what needs to happen to move them to either the 50% or the 66% if they're not there yet. So that's very exciting to see. I also just want to mention, you mentioned most of the public outreach correctly, and for good reason, was towards the larger businesses and the mid-sized businesses. Now, assuming this moves forward, I really think it'd be time to take extra effort to go to the small businesses, not because they're going to see huge increases, but there's really a substantial benefit if they go from 0% to 50%. I mean, even for a small business to save $60 a month on trash fees, that's $720 a year, which adds up after a while. And for small businesses, I think that's a good incentive to now try to move into that category. So I really strongly encourage you to do that in your next phase of communications to the businesses. So, but I'm very excited to see how this will pan out in the next couple of years and see what how things will change. So I appreciate your diligence and work on this.
Entertain a motion, Mr. Williams.
I'd like to move adoption of the new business rates.
Second.
Okay, did you have something else too, Mr. Williams?
That?
Did you have something else? You had
Yeah,
your
no,
light on.
I just wanted to say,
Okay,
you
go
know,
ahead.
this is, I view this as an opportunity to save money. In the long run, to save money by not having to open up a new landfill, but in the short run, to save money for businesses and that are enterprising enough to recycle at least 50% of their waste and can thereby save money and have the financial incentive to actually recycle. In the past, I think the difficulty has been there for people who love this. It's actually, it's been a burden. It has not been easier to recycle. It has not been cheaper to recycle for business customers. And these new rates, I think, give the proper financial incentive as well. And, Councilmember Schneider brings up a great point that our schools could definitely use a little bit more money to adapt to the state budget cuts, and so I'm glad to see them moving on this immediately, so that maybe we can give them a little bit of reprieve in their trash rates, so that they can move on to the important business of educating our kids.
True. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Mayor,
Oh, yeah.
you actually don't need a motion today.
Oh.
We'll be bringing back the resolution to you in 2
Oh, I
weeks.
see. We're just holding the public hearing. Thank you. Okay. Well, we are ready anyway, so anytime. Now, this is good. No other questions? Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. I know it took a lot of work. We'll take a little break, but I'm not going to be coming back from the break.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. We will now resume. Ms. Rodriguez, would you please read the item?
Item number 12, appeal of the Planning Commission denial of 1642 and 1654 Calle Cañon and 2418 Calle Montilla subdivision.
Okay, we'll begin with a staff presentation. Mr. Cotto or Mr. Gullett? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Francisco, council members. This proposed project is a subdivision of 2 lots into 6 lots on a 7.4 acre site. The project includes grading, retaining walls, and paving for driveway access off of Calle Cañon. It also includes public improvements, curb, gutter, sidewalk, and parkway on Calle Cañon, and development and building envelopes for 5 of the lots. 3 existing residences on the lots would remain. The Planning Commission reviewed this application on May 21st and unanimously denied the application, finding that the development was inappropriate for the site and inconsistent with the general plan. The applicants appealed this decision, requesting that council reconsider the Planning Commission's action. And please note, as stated in the council agenda report, that this project cannot be approved today due to the status of the environmental review. It can only be denied or allowed to proceed through the process. And I'll talk about that more later. This is an aerial view of the project site. This shows slope contours, existing lot lines, and the A2 E1 zone boundary. The property is located in the Alta Mesa neighborhood between Ealings and Escondido Parks and has street frontage at 2418 Calle Montilla to the south and Calle Cañon to the east. This is a perspective view of the property. This is looking toward Ealings Park from the east. On the left is Calle Montilla, and on the right edge of the screen is Valeria Street. Review of this project extends back to a Development Review Committee review back in 1996. The formal development application was submitted in 2000. This project received 3 Planning Commission reviews, including the May review, and 8 design reviews between 2000 and 2007. Summaries and minutes from the previous reviews are included in the agenda report. Required applications for the proposal are a lot area modification for Lot 6, street frontage and public street waivers to allow the creation of lots 3, 4, and 5 with no public street frontage. Wall height modification to allow retaining wall to exceed 3.5 feet within 10 feet of the front lot line and along the driveway for lots 1 through 4, and a tentative subdivision map for 6 new lots. And I'll quickly go through the site plan for each lot. Lot 1 is approximately 1.76 acres, average slope of 34%. There's an existing 815 square foot single family residence on the lot and no formal parking. The building envelope is 31%. This lot includes grading on a greater than 30% slope for the access driveway. There's also an earthquake fault which extends across Lot 1 through Lot 3 and 4. And there's also a road easement along Kaya-Canyon on Lot 1. Lot 2 is approximately 0.87 acres, 18% average slope. This includes the existing 1,040 square foot single family residence. There's a proposed bioswale under a tree canopy on this lot. Lots 2, 3, and 4 are the lots that require public street waivers and street frontage modifications. Lot 3 is 1.24 acres, 24% slope. This lot has 3 building envelopes. The northernmost building envelope contains 5 oaks and is designated for accessory use only due to its location below a landslide, which is located here. The middle envelope is adjacent to the fault and the landslide and contains 14 oaks, and no vehicular access is proposed to the southernmost building envelope on Lot 3. Lot 4 is approximately 1.2 acres, 27% average slope. The building envelope on this lot is adjacent to Elings Park. This lot includes a portion of that landslide, oak woodland, and that earthquake fault I mentioned previously. Lot 5 is approximately 1.81 acres, 35% slope. This building envelope is located on the ridge like Lot 4. The access to this building envelope also requires grading over 30% slope. This lot contains individual oaks, also 3 landslides located here, here, and here behind the retaining wall for the driveway access for lots 1 through 4. This lot contains the remainder of that road easement that along Kaya-Canyon, and the wall height modification is actually located on this lot. Lot 6, 0.23 acres, 12% average slope. It includes the existing 2,400 square foot single family residence on Kaya-Montia. The resultant lot configuration would match the 1962 lot lines for this lot. In 1975, there was a down zoning, so it does not comply with general plan density or slope density and zoning. But staff has previously indicated support for returning this lot to its previous configuration, since no further development is proposed and the lot size and configuration is consistent with the other lots on Kaya-Montia. This is a section of the retaining wall at the driveway entrance for lots 1 through 4, where wall height modification is required. This is where it cuts through the retaining wall. The total height of the wall in this section is approximately 17.5 feet. In previous reviews, the staff and planning commissioners have expressed support for driveway improvements in this area to provide adequate emergency access to the existing residences. And this is a composite image of the subject property with topography and an overlay of the site plan to give a feel of how the project would sit on the site. So by state law and our local ordinance, subdivision approval requires affirmative general plan consistency findings. In the Planning Commission's review, it was found that the proposed project is inconsistent with the open space, land use, and conservation elements, particularly with regard to hillside development, visual resources, and biological resources. And I'll go through some of the relevant policies. This is the general plan map. It identifies areas classified as major hillside open spaces with green. These areas include the project site, which is circled here, other portions of the north slope of the mesa, and portions of the foothills. And this is an aerial view of the vicinity with the subject property highlighted, and you can see the building footprints in blue of other properties. The open space element includes a discussion of the Mesa Hills hillside open space area, and it states that the location of development should be controlled in a manner that will preserve the natural characteristics of the terrain and native vegetation. In the land use elements discussion of residential areas, it states that densities as low as 1 dwelling unit for every 10 or more acres may be appropriate in some of the steeper hillside areas. The conservation element contains goals, policies, and implementation strategies pertaining to visual resources. There are 3 slides of these. I'll quickly read through them. They include protect significant open space areas from the type of development which would degrade cities' visual resources, prevent the scarring of hillside areas by inappropriate development, maintain the scenic character of the city by preventing unnecessary removal of significant trees and encouraging cultivation of new trees, ridgeline development, which can be viewed from large areas of the community or by significant numbers of residents of the community, shall be discouraged. Significant open space areas should be protected to preserve the city's visual resources from degradation. Development on hillsides shall not significantly modify the natural topography and vegetation. Trees enhance the general appearance of the city's landscape and should be preserved and protected. And development which necessitates grading on hillsides with slopes greater than 30% should not be permitted. Additionally, the conservation element contains a goal and implementation strategy regarding biological resources. Because of the inadequate environmental information, staff cannot say in the affirmative that the proposed project would be consistent with these. The single-family residence guidelines also provide they also apply to the proposed subdivision and provide a tool for the single-family design board and city council to help determine if appropriate findings and approvals can be made. And these are some of those hillside guidelines. Multiple geologic and biological reports have been submitted for this project. However, the project impacts remain unknown due to incomplete information on landslide mitigation and associated biological impacts. Because of staff's continued concerns and the Planning Commission's previous comments regarding the appropriateness of this development for the site and consistency with the general plan, staff chose to bring this project forward for consideration of denial in the interest of minimizing further project expense rather than preparing a full environmental analysis of the project. And the CEQA guidelines specifically provide an exemption for project disapproval. So staff concurs with the Planning Commission's previous position that the proposed project is inconsistent with the general plan and physically unsuitable for the project site. Therefore, staff recommends that the council deny the appeal, upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the project, making the findings in the Planning Commission resolution. That concludes staff's presentation. We're available for questions. Commissioner Lodge is also here representing the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Gullett. Any questions for staff? Mr. House.
Thank you for the report. I'm looking back real quickly at the submittals that are included in our staff report that go back to 1986 and come forward. And it appears to me, and I'll just ask you to confirm or correct me on this, it appears to me that in most of the reviews, I'm looking to see if there's any that varied, staff had taken a consistent position with regards to lots 4 and 5 and the development there and access to them. But could you characterize that or talk to me about that a little bit so I'm sure that I'm understanding correctly? Because I see lot 4 comes up even towards the end and at several times. And so what is staff's position, and has it been consistent? Am I reading it correctly?
Mayor Pro Tem, addressing Councilmember House's question. The staff has more consistently been concerned with the development of Lot 4. I should say more concerned with the development of Lot 4 than the development of Lot 5 because of the landslide, Oak Woodland, and the location of that building envelope next to the park. But staff has also
that was
been
the
concerned
that
with
was
Lot
the
5.
main that was the focus of the concerns. There was general planning consistency concerns that were noted in here, but it seems that eventually, as it went along, it refined down to at the very last few submittals I'm reading here, a very specific concern about Lot 4 and its proximity to these other issues and the grading and drainage and hillside issues.
Yeah, my read of the record is that staff is more concerned about Lot 4.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we have Commissioner Lodge here representing the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Francisco and council members. I'm Sheila Lodge, representing the Planning Commission. As Mr. House asked about the repeated application reviews over the years, starting in 1996, over 13 years, I was going to speak to that. And they are consistent, not just on that specific lot, but in general. The comments from staff have been that this is not consistent with the general plan. And the Planning Commission's decision, a unanimous decision, was that there's no way we could make the findings that this was consistent with the general plan, which would have to be made in order to approve it. As was mentioned by staff, the map is not consistent with the general plan. The construction of the proposed driveways and build-out of the lots would not be consistent with the general plan. And the project site is not physically suitable for the type of development due to steep, unstable slopes. The Planning Commission felt that there were other possibilities, but that basically this was too intense. There was too much development for this difficult site. And so I urge you to uphold the Planning Commission and deny the appeal. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Any questions? Mr. Williams.
Commissioner Lodge, can you elaborate a little bit more on the clustering comments that have been made? Obviously, you weren't at every single one of the hearings since 1996, but it would be nice to get some idea of the suggestions. I looked at the map myself and wondered a little bit about that, but I wanted to know a little bit of what the planning commissioners maybe had in mind.
That was basically referred to staff and the applicant to figure out, because the applicant asked the commission, and yes, clustering does seem to be a possibility, but again, with less intensity of development of the site as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. House?
Yes, Ms. Lodge, I watched the replay of actually I watched it live, I guess, when you were discussing this, and one thing I don't know if I caught it or not, but maybe you can help me with this. The structures that are on the site already kind of correspond to some of the development envelopes that are recommended. Not almost precisely, but they're there. And at the very end, there was this discussion of clustering and all that. But I might have missed it earlier in the discussion. Did you talk about whether the existing locations where there are structures on the site would be considered acceptable within, that they would be workable here? I see they put a site plan up there for us to look at, recognizing that the site 4 and site 5 and also the one that's on the hillside there near the existing, where the end of the driveway is. Did you discuss that at all in your conversation? I didn't watch the whole conversation.
Councilmember House, I don't recall that we did discuss that specifically. There seemed to be just sort of a general acceptance of what's there.
Mm-hmm. The flatter area down there,
The
sort of towards
flatter
the end
area,
of,
which
and
seemed
below
a
it.
suitable place for development.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you, Commissioner Lodge. We'll now have the presentation of the applicant.
Carolyn McGuire would like to make a couple comments before I give my presentation.
Sure. And you have up to 20 minutes total for your presentation.
5 more minutes in Planning Commission? Okay, thank you.
You can make it less.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, my family and I thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I'm remembering a rescue dog that we just adopted, and people said so many things against this little dog, that it had been in a cage for 9 months. And we brought it home, and none of the things were true. It got along fine with our cat, and it did not climb fences to escape. It came to us. And so I hope that you can overlook a lot of the negativity and the technicalities that people feel they must make. I'm here to request your override of the Planning Commission in its delays of approval of our plans for these addresses. Our family purchased this property 57 years ago when it was a newly planted avocado orchard. Our parents sacrificed greatly to keep it so that one day their 4 daughters would benefit from this inheritance. These plans represent decades of a family's life and long-term plans for the future. We have followed Planning Commission's 2002 directives to have the ABR approve the view lots as buildable in their natural settings with slope density rules. House designs for these lots were approved by ABR in 2004. We also resurveyed the land from 5-foot to 2-foot increments for better accuracy. We designed the driveway for minimal grading, added 2 bioswales to the plans for better water management, and added an 8-inch water pipe to the infrastructure. We were required to present these plans to the new single-family board in 2007. They appreciated the new driveway design. These added details were to benefit both the family and the community. We were grateful that we passed this meeting with flying colors, but unfortunately the transcript does not show this. We were never told our plans were not acceptable until recently, or we would never have proceeded for countless meetings for over 13 years, guided by professionals, including our land use lawyer. We have heard contradictory statements in reports throughout our proceedings, and they do not reflect the complete truth. Several planning commissioners told us that there was less impact than they had anticipated, and that we should have our plans because we were giving so much in public benefits, which was a win-win situation. We were encouraged by staff that we were almost there. We believe our request has been well within reason, with the recent precedent of 7 homes built more densely on Manitou Road, showing us what might easily have been achieved on our larger, smoother parcel. Also, our plans are similar to neighboring properties with homes on hillsides that are dotted along trees in rural areas, from TV Hill to Yankee Farm, the Portezuelo area, and Hope Ranch. Originally, there were few oak trees on the property. Most were planted without our knowledge decades ago by neighborhood kids at play. We have worked around the trees, and they provide a buffer for privacy for all. We are asking for 3 additional homes on 7 acres, which with the existing homes brings the total to just 5 homes on 7 acres. This number was agreed to at the Planning Commission of 2002. The average parcel size is 1.5 acres. This is a careful design that leaves most of the acreage in open space. This would be unobtrusive, lowering into the hill, and have small impact. The home on Kayamantilla would be reintegrated into the tract. With your help today, our goal is to make this property a beautiful asset to the Santa Barbara community, which will include many safety features such as sidewalks for school children, better lighting, and extensive fire safety benefits for the whole area with 2 fire hydrants, turnabouts, roads, and sprinkling systems as required and approved by the fire department. Thank you for your consideration of the efforts, studies, and attempts by our family to satisfy all city concerns. Our hope at this time is for an agreement that benefits the community, neighbors, the Mesa area, and the long-term property holders. Our whole family thanks you, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McGuire.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Francisco and council members. I'm Pete Allen, architect for the project, friend of the family, trying to help them out with this endeavor here. I wanted to thank you for coming to the site visit yesterday. It's very important in this particular project for you guys to see what's going on and certainly help you guys understand what we're asking for. I think it's important to note that we've been acting in good faith. It's not as if we've been ignoring staff and their comments and et cetera. There has been concern about Lot 4, but there hasn't been no Lot 4, end of story. It hasn't been cut off like that. So there's always kind of been a door open a little bit for us to pursue a project, and we think there's a project here, and so we're here today to ask you guys to continue the project rather than deny it, allow us to keep working on it, and also give us input and direction to us and to staff on what you guys feel is appropriate or inappropriate about what's going on. We look forward to that, and that's why we're here today, with this appeal. Having said that, let's look at the project real quick. This is an aerial shot of, get this right here, of the project, our site, like so. To orient you, Valerio Street's over here, Calle Cañon comes up the hill, Kayamantilla is on the ridge here, and Elings Park is down over here. You guys drove up the driveway yesterday, parked right here where the existing house for Lot 2 is, adjacent to the existing buildings at Lot 1. Then we went up through Lot 3 on the proposed driveway to Lot 4. Then walked along the ridge here past all the large area that's not being proposed for any development. Over to past the Kayamantilla house here to Lot 5. We went down the existing driveway to give you an idea what that was all about. Down Calle Cañon to explain the road improvements and stuff that were required along there, and then we came back up. Okay? This is a map that Dan showed you yesterday, and he's gone over it pretty extensively. But essentially what this shows there is a 30% slope or in light gray, areas of vegetation including many oaks are in the green. Here's the fault area and the areas of unstable soil. And so we've kind of just designed everything around what's left over, to stay out of those areas, with the exception of this driveway going up to Lot 4, which has been an area of concern for staff. What's important, I think, to look at is obviously the larger area, as Dan mentioned before, how our project fits into the existing development and recent developments, adjacent to our parcel. But we match our A2 zone neighbors. We're preserving the rural setting of the site. And as Dan mentioned, we had to go through the expense and time of designing homes for these lots, to take them through ABR a number of times, put up story poles, have the public involved, to see if these were developable, and they were. Did I go the right way? There we go. Staff's concerned, obviously, and the Planning Commission, about the amount of development on the site. One way to do that is just get some numbers. The average lot size is about 1.4 acres for the new lots. And what's really important and the fact that we're holding the density down and preserving the natural character is that 73% of the lot would remain undeveloped, could not be developed. Okay, so there's a lot of area that will, in perpetuity, not be touched. Everyone likes statistics and charts, etc. So I kind of summarized everything here to show you how I got to the numbers. This shows our different lot sizes. The slopes vary from 18 to 35% on these guys. The envelope slope varies, from 6% to 31%, and we have street modification and waivers on 3 of the 5 lots. And this does not include Lot 6 on Kayamantilla because that's really not a lot of a lot of concern. Use the wrong word there, but in any event, this is how we came up with 1.4 acres as an average. And an A2 zone piece of property with no slope density is 0.6 acres. So that just gives you an idea of how we're blending into the area. This number here, the total envelope, is 22% of the total site. That's the envelope. That's not the buildings. That's the area where we could build, put decks, plant, do whatever we want to do, is that percentage. The road, access road up to the site and the turnaround is 5%. So this is where we came up with 73% of this site is left open and untouched. To compare it to the adjacent project that was appealed to council, the lot split, you can see that our lot sizes are somewhat consistent with that. Our slopes are consistent with the slopes on that project. Same with the envelope. And both of those lots required the street modification, street waivers. So from a number standpoint, we feel that we're, in the ballpark there with previous actions. Another issue that comes up, certainly with the amount of development, is how big are these houses going to be? What are the real impacts potentially to be? With the new single-family residence design guidelines, the 100% size, I figured out for each lot, but also figured out the FAR, just to give you an idea of the amount of development of building on each site. And we're from 7% to 13%, which is a relatively low number, but they are big lots, obviously. If we go to 85%, which is what the single-family design board is going to be pushing everyone to do of size, we're down between 6 and 11% of on an FAR. Averages, 9% to 7%. The big number here is that from a building standpoint on the site, 91 to 93% of that site is not built on from a building standpoint. Okay. So compared to the adjacent project, they actually got a larger size than 100% approved at the PC with a modification, and their FAR is right in our FAR. So we are the development of our parcel, our project, we feel is consistent with other things that have gone in that neighborhood. Clustering. Now, this is not something that we talked about every time we met with that we met with staff. It was something that was kind of put out to us, and it's kind of come up recently with everyone else getting involved. We looked at it initially, but for me, as an architect, kind of looking at the intent of clustering is to maintain open space. That's a trade-off you make. We are essentially already giving open space as part of our project. So clustering itself, I'm not sure is going to buy you a lot. But just to give you guys information on what it does mean, and so you can think about it. On our size lot, what a planned resident, a PRD does is it reduces the size of the required lot. And that's what allows you to build stuff more closely. But the setbacks and open space requirements are the same. We still need to get the modifications for, street frontage and public streets, et cetera. And as I mentioned, our project, I think, already kind of meets the intent of that. We can still do it. I'm not sure it's going to make much of a difference overall. The only concern I had that I expressed was that when you put the density together, all the masses of the buildings are in one spot, which is kind of opposite of what you want to do on a hillside development, and that's spot things around. Another way to look at this is that this is infill development in a sense, because the building on Lot 4 is going in between two existing buildings. The access to it meets the 16% slope requirement. We're not taking out any trees as a result of that. This lot here is lower than the lot on Kayamantilla, and the house will certainly blend with the neighborhood. We've been to ABR to justify that, and that's happened. Same with Lot 5. We're adding a structure here that blends in with everything else that's going on here. ABR's taken a look at that and thought it's okay. This site is developable. The second issue that staff's concerned about that we addressed, that I've looked at hard, is the 30% slopes. And development on 30% slopes is a big issue. Where we have development is partially on the existing building that's there that we want to remain. It makes no sense to me to tear buildings down when you don't have to. So that's part of it. Part of it, as was mentioned by Dan, was that the new driveway access needs to cut into that somewhat, but that's been supported by staff. That includes this turnaround area because of the additional safety the project's providing. We have a little bit of clips here on the existing driveway that's coming up in order to make this fire department accessible, but it's pretty minimal. And then, of course, we have a little bit of work that needs to be done as part of the public improvements of the road. But that's it. Those are our impacts, technically, on 30% slopes.
Mr. Aylan, I just want to point out you have 5 minutes remaining.
Okay. Then I will go through the view slides very quickly. But we did an extensive study to document how we feel that public views are not impacted by this project significantly at all. And there's concern that there's ridgeline, maybe we might have ridgeline development. It's hard to see in this slide, but there's a house across the way that kind of got by the goalie and is right on top of the hill, and we're not going to have something like that. It's going to be set down lower than the houses next door. This is what you see from Ealings Park. That's another concern that staff had. Obviously you can see it, but how significant is that? We don't feel it's very significant at all. We feel the project blends in well with adjacent development. This is from the Ealings parking lot. You won't see it up on top of the hill. End of Valerio Street, you won't see it. This is all I could find on Marquardt Terrace from a public view, and you won't see the project. This is from Lacima Road on top of the hill across the way a little bit farther. I had to hold the camera up over the top of the fence to take this picture because there really weren't any public views there. This is from the upper part of Ealings Park. So you'll see, it's hard to see in these shots, but you can see the homes when you look closely on the photograph on top of Kayamania here. So we would be blending in with those there. There's Lot 5 right there. Escondido Park, you can see Lot 5. There's the existing house on Lot 2. Lot 4 would be hidden back behind those trees. This is Lot 5 looking away, so what you can see is what can see you. And it's, again, pretty minimal. Last slide are the benefits of the project. This connection between Valerio Street going by our property over to the Mesa is a key connection point for the city to connect the west side to the beach. And this area here in front of our property hasn't been improved, partially because these guys have held on to it for 50 some odd years. Actually, before I was born, I realized that this morning. So it's a long time. But what are we getting? We're getting widened sidewalks. We're getting parkway to protect pedestrians from the street. We're getting a real curb. Right now there's just a rolled curb. Cars can just hop right up on the sidewalk and hit somebody. We're getting street trees, which I'm not sure are really necessary because we have plenty of trees. We're, as Carolyn mentioned, we've been asked now recently to repair the water line in front of our project. We're putting in a new fire hydrant. And these all, the cost of this, we've estimated about $400,000. So it's a good chunk of money. And that's part of the rationale that the owners have for having, more than a couple of lots. One of these lots is going to pay for all these improvements. And the requirement for these improvements doesn't depend on how many lots we have. We could have 2 lots or 10 lots and we would still be spending this much money. So that's something I would like you guys to take in the mix here as you think about what's going on. So appreciate that, and if you have any questions, we're certainly willing to answer and work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Aylan. Questions from council?
Mr. Aylan, can you just show me the site plan one more time? You had a good color coding towards the beginning of your presentation. because I'm a little bit unclear as to what those, what does each one of those blue areas signify?
Those are the development envelopes that we propose.
So in so there would essentially be 3 houses accessible from the area that's flat right now.
This area, the area that's flat's about right here, right?
Right.
So there's an existing home here, these guys here, and you might be able to get up to this site here from there. That's correct.
So there's two new buildings in your proposed site plan right there.
Actually, well, here we propose this area for an accessory use guest house, something of that nature. This is lot 3 right here. And, you know, this development envelope, Dan is right, you know, we can't access it without going through 30% slope, so we may bag that one. But we have 2 areas that we can develop in.
So those are the 2, and the third one is an accessory structure or just something to get rid of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this one down here. But we can only put accessory structures in here right now because of the situation we're in. We're not, you know, sure exactly how that soil is going to work. So staff has agreed to work with us on that one and allow just an accessory use down there.
And the envelope to the right of that
This one?
is so large because...
That's the flat area.
Now, I know that's an existing building. So why is the envelope of that so large? I mean, are you planning on expanding that or not?
Just to give flexibility in the design, you know, of what the future project might be.
Okay.
Like I said, you know, Doss, these are kind of end up what's left over, you know, with all the other parameters on the site as what we feel is developable areas. So certainly those guys could shrink down or be tightened if that was necessary. But that was our logic.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. House.
Mr. Allen, well, actually, just to make a comment on it, the building envelopes are where a building could be in there. It's not the size of a building. I mean,
That's
it's just
correct.
you'd put a building in there somewhere, and that would be the area that would be considered developable.
Buildings, decks, whatever.
Right. And then when this was reviewed, okay, there was a request at some point for you to create some designs of homes to be reviewed by ABR to, and I remember that came out of the 2002 Planning Commission. I think I was on Planning Commission when I came through. You were too, maybe.
Probably.
Yeah. But we saw it was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
But I remember the request was for ABR to review it so we could get a sense of compatibility. And I remember there were comments that came back that had to do with the typical nestling into the hillside, and then there was also the concept of single-story buildings, but whatever, to address some of the concerns. I think some of the neighbors on Calle Montilla had issues and concerns about views and stuff. On 4 and 5, lots 4 and 5, those are the 2 I'm focusing on just really right now. What was the design of the kind of design of the homes, the bulk mass kind of thing that was found to be acceptable on those 2 sites by ABR? What profile? What did that look like? Can you just give us a description?
I wasn't involved in those. The previous architect was involved in those actual solutions. But what they did was they followed, you know, the guidelines. Even, you know, now the guidelines are more stringent for hillside development, but of nestling the building in the hillside and stepping it up. You know, so we don't have something that's towering up out of the hill. And so they were pushed down, so there was only really on the top level of them a 1-story presence, and then, you know, from the backside. That was important, and that's something I'm sure that the Single Family Design Board would be demanding of any new project that went in there now.
So I'm going to ask a question that you may know and may not, and it's not in our staff report or anything, but I'm trying to relate to the driveway going up the hill to lot 4. Okay, do you know Dennis and Suzanne Elledge's home? Do you know where that is on the other side of the? Okay, and that and there's a drive. They got that drive that went through the oak woodland that went up to their home. That, in my mind's eye, is similar to this. And I know others haven't been on a site visit to see that or anything, but is that is what I see there, is that similar to what you're proposing here?
I wish I could answer that for you. I don't remember the driveway. I can't tell you.
Because I've been trying to find something. Calle Montilla, there's that more recent development. Not Montilla, Manitou.
Mm-hmm.
Manitou has a development that has 6 or 7 lots that was more intensely. There were pads that had been there for some time or something, and I was over there recently just to look at it, and it seems like that had really, pretty intense going up the hill kind of thing, which seemed at a more steep grade than this. I think this is 16% or below 16%. Is that right?
The driveways are at 16%.
Okay.
For lots 4 and 5. So that's correct.
And it was referenced here by the owner. Are you familiar with that project at all? And I'm trying to get some comparison mentally to what we've already approved somewhere else, and I'm just trying to, no way, huh?
I remember being involved in the review of that project. A lot of the site had already been graded just over time by the property owner that had owned it before, and there was a lot of stuff laying around.
But you said on this one that somehow you're going to avoid taking out oak trees.
Yeah, there are no, as we go up here, there are no oaks being removed. I mean, that's why it jogs the way it jogs.
Mm-hmm.
And in working with our geologist, there are ways to do this using caissons and other structural solutions that will avoid us having to do any damage to these trees.
Okay.
But my clients have just kind of ran out of money or, of commitment to the funds to have to go through a whole engineering of this thing to see if it's even approvable. We have fully engineered civil plans on this project. And it's just, to me, as from this side of the dais, that's a lot of effort to go through to see if something's even feasible. Okay. There needs to be a balance there. So that's one of the sticking points, is how do we address staff's concerns in a reasonable way to my clients. That's what we're wrestling with.
Understood. One last question. It has to do with the amount of grading on the site. To what part of the grading has to do with the driveway in, the turnaround at the beginning, the driveway in, the going up the hill versus the grading that's on the developable sites?
It's all the driveway.
It's all driveway.
Yeah.
It's mostly
nothing on the
because
sites.
Otherwise it's cut and fill on each of the.
Yeah, we're not terracing sites or doing anything like that. The sites are remaining in their natural state, and they'll have to. As far as topography goes. That's just the requirements of how we have to do design in Santa Barbara now, is to blend it in with that. So,
all right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Williams.
So that I get this really straight, even though you have there 5 new buildable areas on top of the 2 existing buildable areas, you're proposing 3 new actual homes, not 5 or 4.
Correct.
3 new homes.
Right. These are just areas you can build. They're not separate locations for homes.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions from council, we'll move on to public comment. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Our first speaker will be Kevin Peering, to be followed by Keith Kaufman-Gray.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Kevin Pierick. I'm a tenant at this property, and I just wanted to make a brief statement in support of the property. In particular, I'm interested in getting the sidewalks put in as part of the improvements. It's kind of treacherous going up and down Calle Cannon at the moment, so that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman-Gray, to be followed by Bill Boyd.
Mayor Pro Tem Francisco and City Council members, my name is Keith Kaufman-Gray, and I'm a member of the City of Santa Barbara Transportation and Circulation Committee. My husband Neil and I live at 1615 Calle Cañon. We support the Planning Commission's unanimous vote to deny the proposed 6-lot subdivision and associated modifications and waivers. When I purchased our home in 1988, I knew that traffic and speeding would be an issue in Calle Cañon, but the rural nature of the Valerio Canyon neighborhood won over those concerns. Over 20 years later, I do not regret making that decision. Over the years, there has been many accidents on the curve on the upper end of Calle Cañon. The proposed expansion of the existing driveway for the new homes is at the curve where many of these accidents have occurred. Adding new homes along this winding road would add more car trips to this already heavily traveled road. Other concerns that we have with this project are, number one, the area in the general plan is one of the 2 designated hillside open space areas in the city. This development would take away some of the city open spaces. The idea from some planning commissioners members of the possibility of clustering homes downsloping on this property would go against the general plan. Number 2, steepness of slopes. The hillsides in this area are too steep for the size of the lots proposed. Number 3, this is a high fire danger area. Access during an emergency would be difficult to the new homes. Number 4, allowing this proposed 6-lot subdivision to proceed further could create a precedent for other rural hillside parcels in the area to be subdivided. And there's a lot of larger areas, parcels around here that we could be creating precedent for further subdivisions. The current lots are the correct size for this area. The current use of agriculture on these steep hillsides should continue. This proposed lot split is inconsistent with the city's general plan. We recommend that council deny this appeal of the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman-Gray. Bill Boyd, to be followed by Sandy Gray.
Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council, I'm Bill Boyd, 2430 Calle Mantilla. Our house is located right adjacent to the property, about in the center. Right there. My wife and I have been observing the developments of this property for the last 12 years. Have attended many of the meetings and have met with the property owners at different times, and we really respect all the work that they have done. But I think that the actions that the council or that the Plan Commission has taken, and also the staff report, which lays out a number of alternatives that could still be considered, but apparently the developer and the property owner has chosen to go around the effort to try and continue to work with staff, and I think that that's really inappropriate. I think that the Plan Commission has taken an action, and my wife and I would support that action and recommend that you deny the project.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Sandy Gray, to be followed by Joe McGuire.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, I'm Sandy Gray, and I've lived here since 1964, 45 years, and I'm a recreational walker. I thoroughly enjoy being here in Santa Barbara. It's such a joy, and I use close by shopping when I walk, and I believe it's such an asset to be here in Santa Barbara, to have safe places to walk and enjoy the beautiful homes and gardens and open spaces. And I am wholeheartedly in favor and supporting these plans. To me, they seem so small, with 3 new houses on 7 acres and just renovating the 2 that are already there. So it seems to me this won't change the neighborhood at all, except for the benefit of the neighbors, because there will be sidewalk and safety improvements, and it will be creating stability for the future in this area. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe McGuire, to be followed by Pamela Garland.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, thank you. I have the privilege of reading a letter from Pamela Haldeman, who shares the longest border with our property. I'll read it directly from it. I happen to say, Dear Madam Mayor and City Council members, I am writing this letter in support of the project at 1642 and 1654 Calle Cañon. For 32 years, I have lived at 1533 West Valerio Street and share a very long common property line with the proposed project. Over the past several years, I've followed the progress of this proposal through various boards and commissions. I have noted that the applicants have completed with the charges requested by ABR, and the Single Family Design Board, and the fire department. As a resident of the neighborhood, I realize that we all live in a very high fire area. Having watched a structure fire on this property, I know that the closest fire hydrant was on Cali Cannon. I look forward to having 2 fire hydrants on the property as required by the fire department. This would locate a source of water close to Ellings Park. The project would include landscaping that would provide a buffer for fire protection. The proposed project meets the open space of the property with minimum impact to the neighborhood. The improvements along Cali Cannon would make it safer for people to walk and to bike, and not to mention the fact that the construction of new homes, of course, increases property taxes and more fees for the city. Having lived here for 32 years, I have seen many changes to this neighborhood. Ellings Park was undeveloped when we moved in, and the property on Cali Cannon was nothing but avocado trees. Changes come to in any area, and we need to weigh the rights of the property owners versus the concerns of the neighborhood. Thank you very much for your consideration. Pamela Haldeman.
Thank you very much. Pamela Garland, to be followed by Jay Goolsby.
Pamela Garland. I live at 1640 Cali Canyon, and I've lived there for about 15 years. And I'm having a hard time thinking why anyone would want to build houses on earthquake faults and landslides, first of all. I mean, I don't understand why anyone would want that to happen. You put people in homes that have earthquake faults and landslides, and if we have any, the people who live in the homes, are jeopardized, and it just doesn't seem like a very good way of dealing with people. You're putting people in danger by putting them in homes that are dangerous to live in. The land that is on that property and around that property is 75% sand. It's always falling down the hill. I don't know how you would be able to do anything except put concrete blocks, and walls, making the hillside sort of an eyesore to look at, and the beauty of the natural beauty would kind of be wasted with all the building that's going on. The road that is the winding road, I don't know how one would be able to make that straight so that it's safe, because you can't make it straight. So the traffic would be a main artery from Valerio to the Mesa Shopping Center, and it's dangerous already, and you get a lot of people going up and down that road, and there will be a lot of people going up and down that road if it's bigger. It just seems very aggressive to the area. Just something that I'm not opposed to having a few of the houses up on top, but the Cali Canyon area is small, and it just is not conducive to big building. And that's what I see is going to be going on if this is not opposed.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker will be Jay Goolsby.
When I was young, it used to bother me when old people were cynical. Now that I'm old, I can understand why they were. I remember Carolyn Hazard said 100 years ago, Santa Barbara's really going the dogs. They're overdeveloping it. She's the one that lived where now St. Mary's Retreat is. I think this development hasn't occurred before because it doesn't make any sense, really. The way it was developed originally with the avocado trees and so forth was a reasonable way to develop it. I think it should stay that way. I think this is not just property for the person that owns it, although there definitely need to be taken into consideration. But this is community. This is a big asset to the city of Santa Barbara. The way it is now, I go by Cajon frequently and see that street modified with the big retaining wall and that sort of thing. isn't it appealing to me? I think the connection with Ellings Park is good. I think the city should look at this property as something that's really an asset to the city, and what would we like to do with this property and buy it like we did with the Wilcox property. There's only 4 ways access to the mesa from the city, and this is one of them, and the traffic is increasing whether the road's made wider or not. The traffic is quite a bit of traffic there. The sidewalk, widening the sidewalk is nice. I think a big consideration should be taken care for bicycles using this access to the city from Santa Barbara. So I would say to continue on the path of not allowing more development on the property, but actually thinking about taking up a collection from the city to buy the property.
Thank you, Mr. Goolsbee. Mr. Aylen, you still have 1 minute and 40 seconds remaining of your 20 minutes if you want to say anything further.
No, I think we're good. We're here
Okay.
to answer questions.
Very good. Thank you. In that case, it's to the council. Mr. Williams.
Findings are important, and I think the Planning Commission did do their job well in looking at the findings necessary to make, and that I would not have been able to make those findings either, and would have made the conclusion that it's not consistent with general plan guidelines, goals, policies, and implementation strategies. I think that the reason is clearly Lot 4 and to a lesser extent Lot 5. I think Lot 4 is sort of a clear example of not meeting those the sort of goals and spirit of the general plan development. It's harder for me to make that same conclusion with Lot 5, but it is a sort of, I'm sure from a neighbor's perspective, just an obnoxious place to try to put it, though it is the only flat place to put it. And I guess in order to, in order to not be totally non-constructive, I do want to talk to what I think might be something that the applicant eventually wants to go towards, because I do feel for an applicant that's been in the process for 13 years and do understand that there is some property rights in conjunction with this, and I don't want to deny that. So even though I am going to vote to deny the appeal, I did want to say that to me the constructive thing would be to try to use the clusters concept, not trying to be, as indicated by the Planning Commission, but not trying to be too intense. I think what you're asking for is 3 new units. I think that probably 2 could go in. I would, if I were you, and if there was a way to negotiate this so that it was financially feasible, I would try to negotiate with staff to drop at least some of the extractions, though I would recommend to keep the sidewalk because it's sorely needed. But to drop Lot 4 and Lot 5 and try to see if you could move that lot sort of in that triad there a little bit, to be a little bit smaller, the lot for the existing building, so that you might be able to fit in 3 units around that turnaround. Obviously, you need to get some distance away from the slide in order to do that, and it seems to me that the size of the buildable area that you're looking for may be interfering with moving the second buildable area over. That may also be a point of negotiation with staff, because that's the smaller of the lots that you're dealing with. But at least from my perspective, if you had 2 new units there, it would be at least hidden from the surrounding neighborhoods. It would not be as it's kind of like completing a cul-de-sac. It would not be deep into the oak woodlands. and perhaps that would be some way to end this sort of long unfolding nightmare for both the neighborhood and the applicant. But to me, I just can't support the plan as proposed site plan. I think especially the lots 4 and 5 just are not something that resembles what we are attempting to do in the future of Santa Barbara. I think sometimes it's hard for people because they see examples of development in this pattern in the city, but some of that development obviously took place before we tried to create that vision of protecting our hillsides and our open spaces in this manner. And I think that it would be important, particularly to protect that in regards to a development so close to Elings Park. So I'm a vote to deny the appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Schneider.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone for coming. This is a difficult piece of property here because of the issues mentioned before, the topography, the fault line, the landslide potential, and it's unfortunate how long this has taken up to this point. So I guess my comments, I want to be as strong as I can to try not to lead the applicant down some other path and through numerous other meetings and hearings and meetings with staff, and just to get to a point where we might just find that it's just not doable. And 13 years is a long time, and looking at the history of this, and back in 2002, when a lot of the same concerns were just kept repeating over and over, depending on whether it was the Planning Commission or staff or so forth, and I'd have to agree with them that those are big concerns for me as well. The driveway going up the hillside over the fault area and up to lot 4 in particular is of concern in the steep area. And going to the site visit too was always, it's always great to go to site visits because you can really understand much more so than what you can see on a flat screen there. As much as I appreciate the idea of sidewalks along that area, that should not be the reason why to approve or move forward with this project. I mean, that's something that we can look at separately, as another circulation area. But I think the Planning Commission basically did their work well in looking at how it does not abide by the general plan, especially areas related to the conservation element. Development on hillsides shall not significantly modify the natural topography and vegetation. Significant open space areas should be protected to preserve the city's visual resources from degradation. Ridgeline development, which can be viewed from large areas of the community or by significant numbers of residents of the community, shall be discouraged. I mean, I understand if we were to move forward, then you'd have a full EIR to flesh this out more completely. But just by looking at this, I just don't want this applicant to feel like I have to go through all that and then come back and find that we're back to where we are today, or back where we were with the Planning Commission in terms of the general, what I see is not being able to make the findings with the general plan. So as hard as I know that must be to have our applicant hear that after all this time, I can't make those findings as well, and I'm going to have to agree with the Planning Commission and deny the appeal.
Thank you. Councilmember Falcone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Francisco. This is the kind of case that we always get that's so awful and hard, and that's why it's here. Refresh my memory. The two choices that we have today are to uphold the Planning Commission, which results in a denial of the appeal, and therefore do they start over, or we give direction for them to continue to work with specific directions, such as maybe Lot 4 ain't going to fly under any circumstances, so let's do something else with that. Tell me a little bit more about the specific kind of decision that we get to make today, because it's a little more complicated than just a denial. Danny?
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Falcone, you are absolutely right. Those are the two options that you have. One is to deny the project, and one is to not deny it. I mean, to uphold the appeal, which means the project gets to go forward. Part of the reason that we're here is the message that we send to this applicant. The applicant, and this is a problem that we have a lot of applicants actually, they hear what they want to hear. And all this time that we've come to them, the Planning Commission and staff, with concerns about, we don't think this project is going to work. We don't think this project is going to work for many years, and they haven't heard the message. When I became the development review supervisor and this project came to us, I realized what was happening, and that's why we took a different course. Instead of saying, again, we don't think that this meets the general plan, we said we don't support this project, and the only way that we should go forward is to deny it. And I'm not sure that they even still get the message. So I guess my recommendation to you is to please deny this project, because then that will send a clear message. They can go back and start from a clean slate. I just don't think if the commission or the council were to just uphold this appeal and give them some new direction, that would get where you want to get. We would get to an EIR that would spend, at least $100,000 in my opinion, and then we might be right back where we are. So that is your choice, but I don't recommend going that way.
Thank you. I want to see these people be able to get to some place that is going to give them an outcome that is suitable for a family that has owned this property for longer than I've been on this planet. Whether it's this project or not is not necessarily for me to say. Now, I understand that there's a certain amount of entrenched desire here on the part of the applicant. However, I don't think I can be comfortable sending them back to square one. It's been a long time. Now, if there's some place in the middle that you can get to, and I don't want to hash it out here, and so I'm not going to, because there are benefits to the community. There are rights here to be respected. There is something that can be done within reason to protect the neighborhood, to protect the hillside design guidelines, to protect the intent of the general plan, and to send these folks back after 13 years to square one, to me, just smacks of fundamental unfairness, although I'm not blaming staff. Don't take it personally, because I'm not. I understand that everybody has been going here in good faith. I believe what Pete says, that everybody's been trying in good faith. But sometimes it's not just the applicant who wants what they want. Sometimes it's, staff too. And I can't get beyond the feeling that on a piece of property this side, albeit with all its various constraints and difficulties, that there is something more creative that hasn't been thought of. So aside from us, and I don't want to use the C word, condemning the property, which is not feasible, and these folks would need to turn around and sell it. There's got to be something that works for everyone. I just don't think that people have gotten out of their own way in order to find it. And so I send this message as strongly to the applicant as I do to staff. There's a coming together here that I've tried to work for 8 years in all sorts of realms, and I feel very strongly about this. The findings are very difficult to make, and I don't really think that I can, in good conscience and in all honesty, make those findings. As emotionally empathetic as I am to the applicant, there's just sort of the is and the ain't of it, if you will. But I can't vote to send them back to square one. So I don't know where that leaves me.
Thank you. Mr. House, any comments?
I want to hear
staff have to say on that?
There is a middle ground. I think one of your attachments, I think it's the last attachment of your CIR, is a letter that we slaved over.
Well, I was asleep by then. No, I'm kidding.
We worked really hard on Dan Gullett in particular to come up with something that we thought would work. You know, we have a little bit different opinion than Councilmember Williams, I think, because we thought Lot 5 is workable. You know, I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that, but we thought instead of 6 lots, you know, we could look at 3 or 4 total. You know, so an additional 1 or 2 units. Is that right? Yeah. So we've been there.
Very good. Mr. House?
Yeah, this is really a difficult one. The general plan is pretty clear about this area as part of almost a green belt around the side of the mesa there. If you look at the other existing development in the same general planned area along the entire green belt area, however, it's not unlike what's being proposed. I mean, the issues of the specific design of the driveway going up through the woodland and that, you know, raise issues. But the actual number of units per acre and the pattern of the loose development inside the oak woodland along the terraces of the side of the mesa, it's much more intense in many places, and in some places it mirrors this very closely. So I'm going to back into it a little bit. The existing structures on the lower properties there in lots 1 and 2 and 3 are appear to me to be not as nearly as controversial as these. Oh, and of course 6, the one that's up on the top, but not nearly as controversial. In fact, it seems like that's the direction that Planning Commission was heading in terms of what they felt was a proper location of improvements in that flatter area, and then perhaps even on the side of that little hillside there on, I think it's lot 3. Pete, you can help me there, or somebody with a pointer, but the one that's just to the right of the circle around the landslide thing. So where the two, let's see if we can get that going. Call them lightsabers. Okay, right there, that's one of them, and then the house is another one, and then the 2 structures there, those 3. And they don't pose the big issues along the side of the hillside or up on the top. And then watching or looking at the conversation ABR had about Lot 5, it was to not prop it up on the very tip top of the hill, but let it be down on the side right where the end of that driveway is, so that it nestles into that hillside, still has its view, but it doesn't loom over the houses that are down on the other side of that little ridge. One of the big issues seems to be this development of an extended driveway up through the oak woodland up to Lot 5. And then that proposes a perched up on the top of that open space area, which I think has raised a lot of concern. And I wanted to hear staff's last comment here, because the already existing graded access road off of Kayakanan to Lot 5 kind of gives us a real good visual and physical demonstration of its access without all the other grading and other implications of the 4th lot, which has of course the best view, but still. So when what would be next would be some kind of environmental analysis, which is would be the next step from our conversation today if this were to move forward. And I feel that I could support an analysis, an environmental review of a project that was constrained within those first 3 development areas that we just talked about in that lower section, and on Lot 5, but not Lot 4. And that I know that takes out a hunk of money that would go towards infrastructure and this and that. We'd have to properly scale the requirements if this ever were to be approved. That seems like it would be very consistent with for me now, with our general plan. It leaves the it would leave the entire hillside all the way across the entire property, with the exception of the one spot just above the turnaround at the end of the driveway. The entire hillside all the way to Ealings Park untouched. It would keep the development pretty much where it is now, and then the other lot 5 seems like it. I mean, just seems like it wouldn't have the same impact at all, because it's already got the disturbance with the little road, and it's on that little piece that's just above and behind the other houses. So I don't know. That's something I feel would be of interest to me if there were going to be some follow-up. And it goes I think it goes along the lines of what staff was trying to convey. I read this. I did, by the way, manage to keep my eyes open after getting the whole report done and read this last little section. I was intrigued by it. Yeah, it's amazing. How does that happen? So I put that on the table for us to discuss and just see if there's any interest in doing that. It would be, one of the things I do want to say, I don't think anybody anywhere along the way, whether it's the city or the design review board or the applicant, have had any malintent. They've been trying real hard. The applicant's been trying to respond. It's just taken a heck of a long time. Everybody's been so nice along the way, and now we need to just call it. And so I agree with the Planning Commission that I couldn't make the general plan findings here today if we were including Lot 4. However, a downscaled project that might include Lot 5 and Lot 1, 2, and 3, and Lot 6, I would be interested to see the environmental analysis on that.
Thank you, Mr. House. I think for me the sticking point here is indeed Lot 4, and when we went on the site visit yesterday, this is really an incredible location, and I can certainly understand the applicant's passionate commitment to accomplishing something here. It is an absolutely beautiful site, and it's a large site. However, as we walked up that very steep slope to Lot 4, and I'm not a geologist, I'm not a civil engineer, but I had real concerns about how a driveway would be constructed up that slope across an earthquake fault, across a slide area. That's really tough. And we have a unanimous decision by the Planning Commission is what we're being asked to overturn. A unanimous decision. It's not just things like, for instance, potential view issues, which I think could be solved by settling the house into the slope appropriately. I don't think those kinds of concerns are a problem. But this project is currently configured, asks for a lot of modifications. And it's not clear to me that those modifications make sense. I believe that there is some kind of supportable project somewhere in here, but at least in my view, definitely not including Lot 4. I just don't see how that part of the property works, and I don't see how anyone could ever find that it conformed to the general plan. Now, the applicant has also proposed a lot of improvements that I think would be of benefit to the neighborhood. There's no question about that. And what I would like to see come out of this personally is some kind of collaboration between the applicant and staff to come up with something here that will be an asset to the community and that will give the applicant a satisfactory resolution. They have property rights in this property, and they should be able to develop something here. I believe that something is possible. But I don't really see how we could overturn the Planning Commission's denial of the project in its current configuration, and I also don't think that it would be a good idea to say lop off this and lop off that and go forward with an EIR, because as Mr. Cotto pointed out, an EIR is going to be very expensive. So I would propose, and I would entertain a motion to the effect, that we deny the appeal and that we suggest both to the applicant and the staff to work on a smaller project, more consistent with what the constraints that we see here, and hold off on any environmental review until there's a conceptual review and some conceptual commitment from the Planning Commission, from the Single Family Design Board. I don't want to see the applicant bankrupted by this process. That is a real concern. And so what I would prefer is to see the applicant and staff working together on a smaller conceptual design and get that conceptual design approval before any more engineering work goes into this. So that's how I see it, and I would be happy to entertain a motion, but it appears there's more discussion. Mr. Williams.
Oh, I'm just proposing to make a motion that we deny the appeal of the McGuires upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the proposed 6-lot subdivision. That would be the motion. I would agree with your comments, but I think that this negotiation that has to take place has to follow, a denial of the project. And I think there seems to be consensus here on the council that one or two more units on the site are possible, but not 3.
Do we have a second? Further discussion? Mr. House.
Yes, let me ask staff and maybe Mr. Wiley this question. And again, this is not to perseverate or cause more anguish or anything, but to kind of pick up the spirit of the conversation, the constructive spirit of this conversation. We've denied without prejudice before. The intention, of course, is to not really have something go all the way back to square one, but to leave open an opportunity for a constructive next step. But really fully acknowledge the concerns that we've heard from Planning Commission and that are voiced up here today. Is that a possibility or an option in this case? I mean, we've got some direction here too. It's not like we just said slam it. We're saying, gosh, here's some guidance and direction.
Councilmember House, yes, I believe it is. Councilmember House, yes, I think. Over the years, the council has developed this concept of denial without prejudice. It's not in the code, really, but it seems to work, and I think the practical effect of it is that an applicant doesn't have to reapply and pay new application fees. And at times, I think the council has felt that that's been appropriate. In this case, and staff has told you, we need to be careful about CEQA. CEQA allows clearly sort of a summary denial of a project, with recommendation summary denial of a project without really any environmental review. And that's really what staff was trying to do here, more out of a concern for the applicant, that the applicant not feel led down a expensive garden path on something that staff was not prepared to support. And so I guess what I'm saying is, in the context of not having undergone environmental review yet, the council can certainly express its inclination towards this project, and I hear you doing that. Keep in mind, though, that at some point, whether it's this council or another council, you can make any decision you'd like. And it's always tough for applicants, depending on their background and expertise. They need to understand that there's no guarantees, that there can't be guarantees under CEQA, and nothing is assured until 4 or more council members vote on something in the future. So I think, we might want to make that real clear.
Right. And my goal would be to uphold and appreciate the perspective from Planning Commission, because I think there's a real resonance here with that, because the general plan is pretty clear here. On the other hand, there seems to be some guidance that's coming from our conversation that could be constructive, and that would be my wish. But anyway, others may want to weigh in on that, but that would be my suggestion as a possible next step.
I'm fine with amending the motion to be a denial without prejudice.
Second. I just have a question.
Ms. Schneider.
I do have a question for staff, having heard the conversation, because I think we're all in agreement that there's 2 ways. What we don't want is the applicant to feel like, okay, I can go through this long period of process and then be denied at the end if there's major concerns, which we've all expressed up here, but yet acknowledging the 13 years that staff has seen this project. So given the comments from up here, what would be when it comes back to you, what would be your next steps? Do you go back to this letter that Mr. Casey wrote? What, if you could comment on what the, for everyone's sake, what the next steps would be?
Mayor Pro Tem Francisco and Councilmember Schneider. Actually, do you want to answer? Okay. I was trying to give my staff the opportunity.
Nice try, Danny.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you guys, the council, are saying the same thing that we have said. We think 1 or 2 additional units are possible in a configuration that's not this configuration. Our major concerns were with Lot 4 as well. Our second major concern was in Lot 3, actually, not with Lot 5, because Lot 3 is the one that's got the landslide, and it's got the potential landslide, and it's got the earthquake fault, and it's got a bunch of oak woodlands, and it's got some steep slopes. We were more concerned with that, but we thought we could work with the applicant to figure something out in that same realm, although we thought 5 was looking okay. So that's the way we would go. And from our perspective, the denial without prejudice, we like that because there's something in the modification section that says if you deny modifications, they're not allowed to reapply for a certain period of time, 1 or 2 years. And if you deny without prejudice, then you don't have to wait that period, but you would have to pay new application fees. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification purposes, I respect everything that I've heard here today with respect to the Planning Commission and their deliberations and staff and the length of time that it's taken, but this is not going to be a unanimous vote, so I'm going to vote against it, although denying it without prejudice, giving them as much of a break, going back and paying some fees, maybe not all the fees, I don't know the mechanics of it, allowing the modifications, whether they're granted or not is irrelevant, that they have the opportunity to apply for them, is what I hear you saying. And so I think that the motion is as good as it can get under these circumstances, but I can't vote for it. Thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion? In that case, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Any committee assignment reports? In that case, meeting adjourned. Thank you.